Welcome to God's Country, also known as the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zach Cherry, and with me, as always, is...
the one with the puck, Eddie of Edward is Truth.
Okay. I was wondering which one you were going to do.
Me too. It was like a little roulette wheel in my head, and that's just where it landed. You got the good one.
I did.
I love hearing you say that line.
And for this episode, first of all, Happy New Year. We're 10 days into the new year. I don't know if that's allowed, but it's the first time we're talking to y'all. So Happy New Year. Happy 2023. We've got a great year for you.
It's all up to us. It's resting on our shoulders, really.
Yeah, and we're starting it off with Friday the 13th, Part 2.
Yeah.
Because there's a Friday the 13th this week.
Yeah.
This was released May 1st, 1981. Believe it or not.
What?
Yeah, right.
And that makes this movie how old? How old is this movie?
Well, now it's going to be 42 this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm older than this movie.
Are you? What year were you born?
I won't say it on the pod. I don't want anyone stealing my identity. Don't you read the news? I'll tell you off pod. I almost said it too.
I know it starts in a decade that has an S at the beginning.
Yeah, because I'm going.
Whether that's in the 60s or the 70s, I don't know.
The 60s. Yeah.
But okay, because we did our first Friday the 13th episode last year, and there were some interesting theories that you brought up, which we will get to, mostly just in terms of like the mythology of Jason and Mother Voorhees, and sort of just just like how this movie is really like logically possible, because there are a lot of inconsistencies and plot holes between 1 and 2. And you had a very succinct way, a very supernatural element, because there is supernatural obviously in this franchise. It's not apparent in these early movies, but I mean it very well could be a retcon. So I do want to get to that, obviously. Cool. But I guess first, like, I wanted to ask you, where does this, and I know how you hate this question so much, but like, where does this fall for you on like a ranking of the Friday the 13th franchise?
In a ranking, this has been at the top of my list for as long as I can remember. I think this is my favorite because it's also, of the franchise, my favorite final girl, Ginny.
Ginny Field.
Ginny Field. So that's where it is for me. I enjoy it that much. I just was laying back with my arms crossed and a big old smile across my face the whole time I was screening it for this particular pod. So how about you?
Which is funny because this is probably the first time I watched it where I was just like kind of bored.
No.
Having said that, yes, this is I think this is my second favorite.
Oh, okay.
My favorite being the final chapter.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
those usually, it's usually one of those two.
Yeah, they were kind of interchangeable for me, or at least like maybe tied in first. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest drawback for me is sort of the opening of this movie, because it's about 6 minutes worth of recycled footage, calling back the finale of the first movie.
Last season on Friday the 13th. Yeah.
Yeah, intercut with scenes of Adrian King having this like night like no.
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
And can I say that looks like, first of all, the most uncomfortable bedspread that she's laying on top of. She's not even like under the covers, and she's wearing this like big, like thick, like forest green turtleneck sweater with like this sort of like overall thing on top of it, which is like just flannel. It looks very warm. Like this is supposedly like in the summer. This is taking place like within weeks of the first movie chronologically. I believe
2 months after the events. Yeah.
Okay, so we're in August here because the first one was in June. So we're in the middle of August. Like that is not like something like in the middle of summer. I'm gonna be taking a siesta.
Well, okay. Do you? I'll do a premise in a bit, but I did want to ask you since you bring it up. So you do believe that she is near Camp Crystal Lake while this is going on? Because that's another thing I've heard up for debate, but based on who you converse about this film with.
Yeah, because the phone conversation she has with her mother, it's sort of like intimated that like she just needs to move on with her life, because we know from the first movie that she was she had come in from the coast, like she's from California or something, and now it appears that she's staying there, and her parents just want her to come home, and she's like, no, that like I have to be here, like this is the best way I know that I can deal with it.
I just have to put my life back together, and this is the best way I know how. Yeah.
And I don't know, and I don't understand why. I feel like the best thing is just like get the fuck out of there, go back home.
Well, okay, because I'm of the mind that she is near Camp Crystal Lake, also that she's Camp Crystal Lake adjacent at least.
Yeah.
Like maybe I forget what was the name of the town over the cemetery, like that was just where Annie got dropped off, and she started to walk down the road before she got picked up by Betsy Palmer and everything in the first movie. So yeah, I'm thinking like maybe she is somewhere like there, and she's got this little kind of old rickety house that Airbnb wasn't a thing then, so she's rented it. Yeah. And she's just kind of reflecting. She even seems to be channeling like through her art. I love that she's still drawing, and that we basically see two of her drawings on display. There's they're both faces. I assume they're both her, and one is kind of like more naturally colored, and the other one is like and the other side of the face is very, very bright, and then the other portrait that's facing head on seems to be just kind of like non-color, just like white, and then the other side is just in shadow. So like one side is in light, the other is in shadow with like some red as the only like pop out color. So I feel like she's dealing with a lot of duality and a lot of things that she's hiding.
Just reading into shit.
That's so what I do. I am the king of headcanon, and that's why I love this movie, because it presents so many opportunities for you to fill in the blanks, because the writer, God bless him, Ron Kurz, I believe is his name. If you see him in interviews, he is the sweetest seeming guy, and he's just kind of like, I just did the best I could to try and make sense out of like why there would be a movie at all following the first movie. Yeah. So,
well,
so he.
Just to talk. I mean, maybe that's the best way to do this is to kind of go through the movie sequentially.
Okay. Before we do that, do you want a premise?
Well, I just wanted to let's just talk about the opening scene. Because does your premise involve the opening scene, or does it involve?
I mean, it mentions it.
Let's just talk about the opening scene first, and then we'll get your premise. Because like I said, the whole thing is 12 minutes long, and then followed by like the credits of the old style credits where we're now like probably 2 or 3 minutes worth of everyone's name. There's even like a Virginia Fields. I forget what her role is, but that's what Ginny Fields' name is based on. But we have all that. We got the tea kettle and then the exploding this time, not the smashing glass. I will ask you what you think that means, because we had a very specific thought process for the breaking glass in the first one. But yeah, so it's just like this whole thing. I mean, like 12 minutes worth of screen time, 6 of which is recycled footage, and then 6 more of like really nothing happening. Like it's her just sort of like pacing around her apartment, going into the shower, the weird like. Her face just like right there.
I felt like that was them kind of like turning their nose up to the Psycho reference, like kind of like, oh, she went in the shower. That's what, and we're through like the killer POV cam. We all know what that means. And then she just kind of opens the curtain and looks us, down the barrel of the camera as if to say, not in this movie.
It's just a lot of like fake outs.
Yeah.
It's just basically taking like a very early example of just like all the horror tropes just like shoved into this one scene here. This is my least favorite part of the movie. I mean, a lot of that has to do with like what we're describing, but also just how disrespectful I feel like this film and this franchise was to this character.
Sure.
But we also have an instance of Jason placing a telephone call to Alice, or we can assume
in theory,
that's unless it's the mother, like maybe I was gonna say she pocket dialed her, but cell phones didn't exist back then.
no, if you made a call, it was a commitment. Yeah,
because you have to like go all the way around
the rotary
phone.
Wait for it to return all the way back to its starting.
And then if you like get one number wrong, you have to like hang up, start over. And,
right.
It's huge pain in the ass. But I mean, like, if you clock this is like really the same amount of time as the like Scream's opening scene of just like, the 13 minutes of Drew Barrymore, and like that in and of itself is just like its own movie. And here I feel like we're just kind of like biding our time. None of it is like particularly effective. And then of course like a thing which was just kind of a pattern with all the early Friday the 13th is just like like you said, the previously on, which I guess is understandable based on the fact that like home media wasn't a thing back then. So it's like,
right,
if you missed it in the theater, that's it. You were fucked. Unless it like made an appearance on television, you weren't going to see.
This is just a year later too. Yeah.
So. You weren't going to see it. So it was like their way of kind of filling you in on the blanks. So I think maybe back in the day that was kind of exciting and for people to kind of get back into the movie. But like now in like 2022 to 2023, it's grating. Like it's like let's get to the movie. I feel like by the time, this is a very short movie. This movie is like 86 minutes long, and that's not including the final credits or that is including the final credits and stuff. So it's like it's basically over just as soon as it begins, or like the movie proper. So I don't know. Well, I feel like I need to vent.
Okay, because I enjoy the camp aspect of it. Just the fact that she's doing that soap opera thing where she's laying down, having this dream flashbacks, clutching at the air, going, no, and everything. I was laughing my ass off all over again at this particular screening. And because, I don't know, because I know so much about, like, that day, like that was all shot in one day. It was all Adrienne King was, willing to kind of offer, because she was still trying to fit. She had her stalker, who I think we mentioned in the first pod, the first movie. And she was still trying to figure it out and everything like that. So that was an unresolved thing. So that she's really torn about like being on set shooting this sequel for her. Because originally they had offered, the original idea was that she was going to headline in the sequel and triumph again, maybe, but certainly at least be the character we follow for the bulk of the movie.
Yeah.
Whether she made it or not was anyone's guess. She didn't know she was out until the day she showed up on set. There was never a script. They told her it's all going to be improv. And it was like, okay, lay on the bed, have a nightmare and say no. And then walk over here and go to the shower. Now talk to the cat and stab you in the head, which it didn't retract the first time, so she did get an injury. And then they're just kind of like, okay, you're wrapped later, because apparently also the people in the crew were kind of cold to her, because they had all been told that she demanded too much money and was really, really kind of like difficult in the scheduling. They didn't know what she was going through, and also they didn't know she didn't know what she was going into that day. So it looked like she was very unprepared, when really there was nothing to prepare for. There was no scene. They basically, created it on the spot. So she was wondering all the same time, like why is the crew so like cold and mean right now, while trying to navigate all this other stuff. But for what it is, like, yes, of course, if we're looking at it as, you know, like this canonized kind of like send off for this character, it's a ripoff. It's a total, you know, just sellout. And it would have been nicer if they could have maybe held. I wish they could have just like maybe like held off on including her until maybe the next movie, or because at this point they had to know that the goal was to keep making these movies. You know, like the first movie, largely an isolated thing. You were never led to believe that Jason was survived or anything like that. And actually, that can kind of lead us into the premise. Would you like me to read it?
Go for it. I know you've been chomping at the bit.
That's I you know. I modified this off IMDb. It was originally penned by Joe Sek 2001, and I used it as a, you know, baseline, and I revised it. Okay. 2 months after the tragic incidents of 1979, the only survivor of Camp Blood is mysteriously murdered. 5 years later, Paul Holt opens a counselor training center at Packanack Lodge, near the now abandoned Camp Crystal Lake. Ignoring the warnings from Crazy Ralph and an eerie feeling they get on the grounds, young camp counselors find themselves under attack again. Did Jason Voorhees really drown at Camp Crystal Lake? Is there a reason why these murders are happening? And will anyone survive the latest incidents to occur on Friday the 13th, Part 2? Yeah?
Nah. You did the thing. Yeah.
I did the thing that I do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm coming up with a Part 2 and a way to, like, because you can always do Friday the 13th 2, you know, like TOO, but you can't with part. Like, I haven't figured that out yet. Part.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, like, with the way that the first movie ended, with, you know, then he's still there, or he's still out there. There might have been an echo. Was there an echo? We always have debates over echoes.
There wasn't an echo in the first movie. There was in this one when it was the flashback, because that's what snapped her out of it. But just like, the boy who pulled me underneath the water. And
that's a really good Adrian King.
Thank you. But it's from the first movie, so I can't really. It's in this movie, but it's not from this movie.
It's part of it. It's part one. But I think what might have been good, like, if you're gonna devote like 12 minutes of screen time to this character, maybe like something like part of like what she needed to do to put her life back together was to investigate the drowning of Jason, and like, is there really a boy there? And kind of maybe that was like a thing that she would have in her apartment, like maybe like a big board of just like newspaper clippings and stuff, just as a way to like connect the movies and just like and make like some sort of logical sense for her to be there.
That feels so un-Alice, though. Like, what I imagine is...
But like, who is Alice? We don't know who Alice is, because she's basically in a movie and a quarter. Okay.
I know who Alice is. No, I feel like, based off of the, you know, what little we learn of her, like, from the first movie, she's an artist. She's an artist at heart, you know? So, of course, she's channeling it into her drawings. And also, this argument that she's having with her parents, the way I perceive it... also knowing, you know, like, it wasn't scripted, and, you know, Paramount didn't care about these movies. They figured they make money, so yeah, you can make another one, but we really don't give a shit. And a lot of times they were, you know, a mad dash to just kind of get something in the can so they could, you know, put it out and meet a deadline and everything like that, which is exactly what happened with this opening. That said, what I perceive when I watch it, you know, canonized and everything, is that I think she was just there to kind of like meditatively investigate herself, her own feelings. Like, I'm not going to be able to rest if I keep running from this thing. and it's been 2 months, and I can't sleep. I can't do anything, so I'm just gonna rent a house. I'm gonna go out there. I don't want to be on the lake right away, but if I'm kind of like in a town nearby, during daylight hours, certainly, maybe I'll take a stroll. Maybe I'll do the perimeter of Crystal Lake, and maybe I'll take my sketch pad and just draw out my feelings and everything like that. Maybe I'll do a journal entry. Maybe I'll sing a song. I don't know.
Well,
but I think because she never really got to grieve all the people she lost either. So I feel like she was making.
She knew them for 2 days. Come on. Not even. It all happened. Literally the day is like when they all arrived at camp. Was it not?
No, because the first night.
There was no first night. Remember
the first movie now.
No,
Wait.
She had been at the camp for a while. I think like there was
no, because they're all like in their Okay, I don't remember.
No. Her like because he had already like started working or like opening the camp for like a week. She had been there for a week, and I think like her not boyfriend that she was flirting with, that character,
right?
He had been there for a while, but like it was the Kevin Bacon character, and then like his girlfriend and friend, they had just arrived that day. That was the Friday the 13th, because like as soon as they get there, Steve Christie's like
full day. If that all happened in one day and they changed their clothes, like because they're also wearing different outfits, like from scene to scene. Why would she?
It was all
in a
one
completely
day.
Different outfit.
It was but seriously, it was all one day. Because remember, he's like, I got to go into town because I got to go meet up with my waitress.
Okay, I'm not qualified to have this argument right now because you know how undependable my memory is.
Well, I feel like when we get to the sequels, because I think like especially with like 3 and 4, like these all like 2, 3, and 4 all take place sequentially, like within a week. Like really like the Friday the 13th is the night, like the second night of this movie, and then it's like Friday the 13th Part 3 is like Sunday or Saturday the 14th, and then
it spills into the next week. For sure.
Like it literally goes into a Wednesday, but they're all called Friday.
But like the furthest we get away from Friday the 13th in this movie, not counting like the days that precede it, is the next morning is clearly Saturday the 14th with "Where's Paul?"
Yeah,
that
and the opening scene as well of just Alice, because I mean you're not gonna get another.
I said not counting the days that precede it. Yeah. You think that happened on Friday the 13th also?
No, the only way that you can get
because it was 2 months after.
Yeah, the only way you can get 2 Friday the 13th in a row is if it was like a February and then a March.
Okay.
And it was like 28 days. Yeah. So it wouldn't have happened if this was like 2 months later. So no.
So Jason worked on his day off.
I know, that's the thing. I mean, at least like Michael Myers is consistent. He like sticks to the holiday, or at least like the days around it. Jason is just like he's getting paid overtime for like the non Friday the 13th days.
His off-season kills.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because we completely abandoned the day after the Paramount movies too. Like, I don't think is it ever Friday the 13th again in any of the Jason movies that follow
I think
Manhattan?
It's just Jason. Well, I mean, like I think that has a lot to do with the rights fiasco. Yeah. So because all the new lines are it's like Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, and then Freddy versus Jason. I mean, like the remake is Friday the 13th, so that I don't know. Yeah, we're jumping way ahead, like movies here.
Yeah.
But I totally forgot what we were talking about to begin with. But
itsy bitsy spider went up the water.
How about how like a crew member clearly throws the cat at her?
I all the animals get nothing but my sympathy in any of these movies. I didn't look at the end credits to see if there was a no animals were harmed in the. I think the cat's okay. It just looked worried. I always worry about the cat when Alice has to take that ice pick to the temple, just like within the framework of the movie. Like I always worry about the cat. Like, oh, it had to witness her getting all whatever, and I thought for the first time, because it's such a parallel with like Batman Returns, with her little stray cat kind of scaring her in the window and stuff like that, and her just like, you hungry? And she wants to feed her and everything like that. I'm like, what if Jason didn't kill Alice and she just kind of, like got incapacitated and fell down onto the floor, and then cats swarmed all over Alice's body and infused her with some kind of like 9 life ability that we don't know, and that's how we can get her back into the franchise. I want that.
See,
I want that
I
movie.
was more so like thinking, or like drawing a comparison to a movie that would come 10 years later, Silence of the Lambs, when she comes home and the cat's in the window and it's just meowing at her, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna come up and feed you, and then that never happens because she gets abducted by the serial killer, and then the poor cat, she drives away, and we're left on the image of the cat just like sitting in the windowsill. It's just like, he's not gonna get fed now.
Yeah.
And the cat starved to death.
It still bothers me.
Yeah.
It still bothers me. But and then of course, then we get the opening title rushing at the screen and exploding, because we did discuss many possibilities as to like what that breaking glass meant in the first one. All I interpret from the second one and the explosion of it all is, now with explosion, the first one just broke the glass, but this one is gonna explode in your face.
Well, it's like it's like
the ante.
Yeah, the Randy Meeks sequel speech of just like you got to have a higher body count. The death scenes have to be more elaborate, like big explosion. He doesn't say that, but I mean like he may as well have just been like more explode, just like we're bigger. We're back with a vengeance.
Which I feel like the opening credits continue to do that throughout. Like it's just kind of like, you're watching Friday the 13th movie kind of thing.
They did do the explosion quite a bit. Like there were, I think that was like their biggest kind of go-to. I don't think we saw we never saw the breaking glass again, but obviously we have the 3D in part 3.
Yeah.
But I think it was an explosion in 4 in the final chapter, and probably maybe in 5.
I feel like there was one in 5.
Yeah.
Like, a new beginning. But maybe I'm just wanting to.
Maybe not like a fight. I don't think there was a fireball, but it was like the mask, almost like like
something.
Yeah, just flew apart.
I mean, I was right about Patrick Bateman wearing reindeer antlers, so whenever we get to part 5, I'll have a feeling. I hope.
We'll see.
Fingers crossed.
I don't think I'm gonna watch any of these movies. I mean, we'll see. Who knows? Until we cover them.
Of course.
Because that's the thing. Like, because watching through this, I feel like so much of it is nostalgia for me. Because like like watching it again and again and again, it just like cheapens the experience for me every time. And I really wish, like, I want to be able to, like, Men in Black, like, mind wipe myself, like, every time I watch these movies and just experience them for the first time every time, Because, like, you never have, like, that same response to a movie like this that you do the first time you watch it. Because I remember, I think I was probably, like, 15. We talked about this in the last Friday the 13th. I just kind of I know that I was staying with friends of my parents because they were on vacation, and we went to the video store when those still existed, and I was just like, I want that one, and I was just, because I'd known of Friday the 13th, so we started there, and I think like the next night we took it back and like, now part 2, and I just remember like immediately just like loving this movie, and it's just like, I need more. I just need to like keep going through them, even though there's nothing is really different between them, like from one movie to the next, but it's still like there's enough like characteristics that it stands out on its own. But it was just like, it was a simple formula, and it was for a teenager who was looking to rebel and watch things that their parents probably wouldn't let them watch. It was just like, yeah, I like this, this is my kind of show. So so now when I watch it, it's just kind of like, well, that's neat, and I had a good time watching it at one time, but now it's just kind of like, I see what I mean. Like, I'll never agree with like a Siskel and Ebert of like that mentality like towards horror movies, because I still think that there's so much to love about these movies, But just from a more like general audience, I can see why. Like I would look at something like this, and I wouldn't rate this any higher than like a 3.5 stars out of 5. Like, and this is like of the higher echelon of the Friday the 13th franchise for me. I don't think like any of these sequels get any higher than that.
Star rating, see, with the rating thing, like, it's always tricky for me. I don't even know what I would rate this, especially, like, relative to the other ones. But I do know that as far as the quality of movie, I don't think I would introduce this franchise or any film from this franchise, reboot included, to anyone with, you know, kind of like the... So trying to sell them on the point that, like, this is a great movie. Although I do have to say, the last person, there were two people. The last two people who I kind of got started into this franchise were a friend, and it was separately. But it was a friend, and then it was my mother. And she really doesn't care. I'll talk about my mom first. She really doesn't care for this franchise. She thinks the people in it are really, really stupid. I think she stands with you in praising. She really liked Final Chapter. She did not like the first 3 movies. The only reason she watched them was out of an obligation to me. And my friend, who I screened the first one with, he had a great response to it because he's really into art house. He doesn't mind a really, really slow burn, and loved getting to know the characters and thought it was really inventive. And then I thought he was going to love this one too, because for me, these two, the first 2 movies are largely in tone and in appearance very, very similar. Like, they feel like they take place in the same world, and you know, like you know, there's a lot of interconnectivity, not linear storytelling connectivity, but just in terms of the experience of sitting there and watching it. And he did not enjoy this movie. I was shocked. He said, "This is so just kind of like your typical slasher. I don't feel like I get as much time with these characters as I did with the ones in the first movie, so I don't really know anything about them. So I don't really feel anything when they get killed." Like,
in the first one, there was a lot of filler scenes, which I don't know. I can't remember back to that episode, but I might have. If I didn't, I'm making the comparison now. It's almost like Cinderella, like the cartoon of just like so much of that movie is padding with like the mice, and that's what Friday the 13th Part 1 feels like. There's just these ridiculous scenes of like the snake in the cabin, and then all of them like coming in there and like closing the door, like what's going on, like just like this like disorganized like chaos of just like we need to improv a scene here just to pad the runtime.
We did address that. I remember arguing that kind of all of that felt like kind of like some kind of portentous, you know, like runway toward, you know, this inexorable end that they all have to meet with Betsy Palmer's character, with Mrs. Voorhees, because her name's not Pamela yet. But yeah, so I remember feeling like it had some kind of significance. And in this one, I felt like there was some significance to the padding also. Like, there were moments with it was weird because also it contradicts itself, but I felt like all of the stuff with Russell Todd's character.
I mean, let's go through it sequentially, like we were going to.
Okay.
But I just generally, I just wanted to say that it's that I don't get that same padding in the first one that I do here. Like, it just seems like everything is within context of the characters and what's happening. Like there's like it's a pretty like tight movie. Like, they're just like everything is just like, you know, really concise, and like considering it's like 86 minutes long, it just works really, like it's just very lean. But just in terms of what you were saying, just the first 5 really, like Friday the 13th, do have this delightful charm about them. I'd say more so the first 4, because 5 is like really in a like kind of like a level of its own, and just in terms of its comedic bravado. I guess I don't know.
The page is turning in the franchise, but in that movie. It really is.
The first 4, there's this subtleness to it. Like, these are movies that like they're told very straightforward, like, you know, straight up horror. but it's done in a way that's kind of like you can't really take it seriously. Like it's just like it's just like a nice little, like you said, like you use the term art house and slow burn like it is that kind of fun, and I think that that's something that I really do appreciate about the first four, and more so here than any of the other ones, because it is so streamlined in the way that it's set up. But that is, you know, something I appreciate about this one for sure. But our next scene, if we're gonna do this sequentially, which I think is good because I don't want to miss anything in this movie, like because it's a short movie, so I don't want to miss anything. But now we're like 5 years in the future, and we're introduced to Jeff and Sandra. Those are the characters.
Yeah. Okay.
Who are like kind of like the stand. They're like the Jack and Marcy of part one for part two.
Yeah. Also, I think maybe off pod we had some discussion about how to pronounce Sandra or Sandra's name. I think one of the main reasons we take issue with her name is it is pronounced two different ways in the movie. There's one point where they get caught trespassing on Camp Blood, and they get reprimanded or don't get reprimanded in the office with Deputy Winslow there and everything like that. And Paul, not to go too far in the future, but just Paul says at one point, Jeff and Sandra, you know, no dessert for Jeff and Sandra tonight. And I'm just
no
like,
seconds on dessert.
No seconds on dessert. There you go. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, cool. So it's Sandra. Awesome. Now I know how to pronounce. And then scenes later, when Vicky makes her discovery, I'll just put it that way, she's calling Sandra. She's knocking on the door. Sandra. So I don't know what the fuck this girl's name is. So call her what you want. Yeah. I just wanted it addressed that there's no definitive way to pronounce this character's name.
Wasn't this actress, wasn't she underage at the time?
Yes, she was.
Yeah, so that was like a point of contention for the
for
production.
Something that's coming up.
Yeah,
yeah.
But
there was a scene they shot that was could no longer be included in the film because it contained nudity and, you know, minor nudity of a minor.
Yeah. Not minor nudity, like not really, minor.
Not
nudity,
not
like
as opposed to major. Not as opposed to major nudity, but of a minor, like an underage party. Yes, no. The Paramount was not about to walk into that lawsuit with their eyes open.
Speaking of minor, director Steve Miner did this. Who also, I know, nice segue there, right? Also directed the sequel to this, Friday the 13th Part 3, and Halloween H2O.
Yes,
it
bears repeating.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about all those movies at some point. I do want to see, just like as a director, because I mean, like the first one, just because I feel like part two is such a huge improvement on the first one in every way. I think the only thing that part one has that part two has less of is Betsy Palmer, because we do get the Betsy Palmer cameo at the end, but we don't have like the big grandiose Betsy Palmer finale that we do in the first one. But just in terms, like Sean Cunningham directed the first one, and we talked about how he's not a director. Mm-hmm. He's a producer, so it's just like there was definitely that inexperience there. That's probably why the padding in that movie didn't really kind of like fit in with the story. But here, like one thing that I noticed is just like how everything flows along so whimsically. Like there's just like the scene transitions of it's like everything kind of like works up to a kill, and then like at that high point, we then cut to. Like there's like one scene where it's just like cuts to the bar and there's like music playing, and like it's just like the energy is the same but the tone is different, and it's just like like the whole movie just like on an energetic level flows really well together from scene to scene, that it feels very seamless in a way,
like a harmonious kind of leveling from here to there. Like, okay, we just had a really real upswing here, we have to pay it off. I mean, and again, like in an odd way, this movie like, I don't necessarily agree with everything that you're saying, but I will agree that definitely there is something about it that works. and that is expeditious, more expeditious. I would definitely agree than the first movie. I still think the first movie like kind of works for me, but with this one, the scenes feel just as much like we're kind of eavesdropping on these kids that we're getting to know as they did in the first movie. But I do feel like they kind of cut to the chase a little bit more. They're a little bit more conscious about like, have we satisfied getting enough to know about this character? Because I mean, that's the thing. That's one thing. There's always a scene in these first few movies that feels kind of like the audition monologue. And in the first movie, it was the blood scene, or the blood dream, the shower dream.
Yeah.
And the rain turns to blood and all that. And while I think it's fun, it doesn't really give us any more access to that character in the first movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like the audition monologue in this movie is the campfire story.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else.
Ginny's.
I mean, that Ginny's.
But that's more of an exchange. Like, she does go on. It is, it could be a speech. You could eliminate the other lines and probably just make it a speech. But I feel like and it really does get us, like, allow us insight to her. But I feel like the equivalent is probably the campfire story, just because it's unbroken, it's a monologue, and it's something that you can tell. Does this character know how to tell a story? Do they know how to kind of like hit the key phrases and draw us in?
Okay. All right.
So
Let's get back to the kind of coming into town, like the introduction of these characters again, because the movie's again playing this game that, like, we talked about it with the first one, of just like, who's our main character here? Like, everyone's kind of introduced, but like everyone's like introduced like very weirdly, and Ginny is actually the last one that kind of shows up. But we do get Jeff and Sandra, and I you talk about these eavesdropping moments, because I feel like that's what the whole scene is, of them just like getting on the phone and calling up Ted. You see the tow truck, which this is also, there's a lot of great lines in this movie, just like very quotable. And I love when they're chasing after the tow truck, and he's like, "That's my truck. That's my truck. Asshole. That's my truck." Yeah. And then we get to the infamous "Welcome to Goods Country."
Yes. Well, also you jumped over Crazy Ralph too. He kind of like grazes over toward them, just like, "Wouldn't the others? They wouldn't listen to me."
And then we see him get on his bicycle in like the periphery, and just kind of like ride off like the what's the character from Wizard of Oz? Like the Elmira Gulch?
Miss Gulch?
Yeah. We just see like him. I needed like a scene in this movie of just like Ralph like on his bicycle, because we do get it, but just like I want to hear like that music, like
that's licensed. Henry Manfredini didn't compose that, so
Harry.
But just to see Walt Gorney play that role again, like that was a nice little bit of connectivity.
Yeah,
also.
it was nice to see him back. And speaking of you being kind of like the king of headcanon, because even in the first movie we mentioned this, of just like how Ralph has a wife, and she's like wondering where the hell he is, sort of thing. So I'm assuming that they're still together, and in your headcanon, his wife is from Friday the 13th Part 5.
It was Ethel, right? Was that her name?
Ethel, yes, Ethel. What's her last? Does she have a last name? I don't know, but.
All I know is my friend Cara Locatell. I mean, I know her. I don't know.
Friend.
She's not my friend, but she was very friendly to me when we took an acting class together. She's a lovely woman. Cara Locatell played her and wore her own wig. Wore her own wig in that role.
So it's just putting it out there that it's the official Cherry Picker headcanon that that is his wife.
Yes, and that is his son, Junior.
But where in Part 1 he went to Camp Blood and lived to tell the tale. Things didn't work out as well this time, but this is there's another line that comes up, and a lot of these lines I feel like I don't even know if they were like improv or like ad lib or just kind of like we're actually in the script, but they're just like subtle character moments that I love, even from characters that I don't even like think about or care. Because there's like the scene when they're driving and they come up to like the big tree thing in the way, which I can only imagine Jason like dragged that out there, because it was like him is like, I don't want people coming to my home, sort of thing. Which is totally different from like the characterization that we see later on, where it's just like, please, like, come to my home because I want to kill people. Like, he likes killing people. Like, here it was almost like he was more of a Leatherface, where it's just like, where are these people coming from? I put that tree in the way. It should have stopped them, but
no. You know what I think he was doing? He was doing something that Alice was doing. He wanted to walk by the lake and grieve and work things out. Maybe do some sketches. I don't know.
No, but I mean like the tree that's in the road.
Yeah, he wanted to be left alone. He wanted to be left alone. So it's
but
just
anyway,
that's his way of. That's his phone call to his mother on the coast, saying, "I just need to work my things out, and this is the only way I know how." That's what he's doing with that tree.
Okay, but the line that I love is just like, okay, so Jeff and Ted get out and they're like lugging this thing off of the road, and Sandra is just kind of like, do, and she's just like, this place is spooky.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
It's the woods, but she's just like, she doesn't even say it in a way that like she feels that it's spooky, and like no knock against the actress or anything, but it's just like she says it so like dryly and just like this place is spooky, and then we had the whole thing of just like finding the sign and just like, oh, Camp Blood, hey, like, and I love how like they're automatically like they're the inquisitive ones. They're just like, oh, this is so interesting. And Ted's just like, never mind that. Or like, I forget what he says.
Oh, yeah. He's just like, no, we're not talking about that. Put that down. We're getting back in the truck. But yeah.
No, but he says something else. It's just like, oh, it's nothing. It's like, don't worry.
Right. But his energy is very just kind of like, because he says something, I think, off camera, like, you don't want to know, especially before lunch or something like that.
Yeah. I'm like, no, I want to like have my meal prepared to me, and I want it like the story that, and like air the movie, like put Friday the 13th Part 1 on as I like dine on a feast.
Right,
I want like my movie, and I want my popcorn, like, I want to eat while I'm hearing about this tale of murder.
Yeah. Also, it seems like because I mean, obviously, like they have to go off the grounds of their own territory to get to Camp Blood. Jeff and Sandra have to later. Yeah. So they're working on. I presume they never actually say the name. Camp Packanack, like Packanack.
It says there's a
everywhere,
sign
but it never
says it's Packanack Lodge. It's on the
exactly,
building.
And then there's another one that says it like it says Packanack Lodge on the cabin, and then there's another sign on the road that says like the training center, and it says something about Packanack, but it doesn't ever say in words Camp Packanack. But I presume that's what it would be called.
Okay, and here's my question of that. Now that they're assembled at the training facility.
Yes,
is what they call it. Like, it's a facility. What the fuck is this place? Because, I mean, I've never been a counselor. I've been a camper. But I just feel like, he's Paul, who we're introduced to here, is kind of like going through all the characters and just being like, oh, Mark, like, I did 2 summers with you, blah, blah, blah. Like, and then it's just like, Scott, like, good to see you, buddy. You need it, sort of thing. And I'm just thinking, like, how many summers do you need to be trained as a counselor to perform this job? I feel like, especially like compared to like the first movie, it's just like these kids were so green. Like they saw like an ad in the paper and just like, I think this will be a cool gig. But here they're saying that like, because what does Paul say? He's like, it's not the gravy summer job that, you all
that people think it is.
Yeah. And it's just like, so how many years do you have to train to do this? That it would like call for an entire facility to be opened up to
train these, training center. Yeah. No, I think that's just Paul like trying to put on his, authority hat, figure of authority hat, and trying to be like in charge and just let people know like, the first day, like, yes, there's going to be fun, but it's not just going to be about fun. I mean, I had never really listened to the number of things he goes down on his list, on his roster of things they're going to cover in the coming weeks that, like, you know, with like rowing and with, you know, all of their survival shit and all of that kind of thing. And I was just kind of like, God, that sounds exhausting. But I mean, I guess if you're the one who's like disciplining, you know, in quotes, you know, these people who might think it's a free ride, maybe he's just more rigid than Steve Christie was. Because Steve Christie, you know, wasn't even there half the time.
He was just there to pick up chicks and his like 70s porn stash and his cut off jean, his like Tobias
and his neckerchief, standing there telling Sandy like they are babes in the woods in every sense of the word. Yeah. And it's like, well, and you just abandoned them, you know, to like go and retrieve this thing on this hitch or whatever. But anyway, I thought I always got the feeling that Camp Packeneck was also the rival camp, because in other movies there was always that thing of like, here's our camp and we suck, and then there's the rival camp, and that's where all the richies are, where all the, you know, the wealthy kids, or those are, you know, that's like the good camp, and we got to outdo them, we got to out prank them, we got to do that, and that's, you know, so that's what I think this was supposed to be. But because, you know, everybody was such a kind of fuck up in the first movie, I think this is supposed to be the more straight laced. You know, I mean, but all of these kids are innocent. Well, like that's something that I like about them, is they all seem, even in their
I like all the like, I mean, like the ones that we know, because there's so many counselors in training here that they're all like,
we don't even get to know all of them.
There's the black guy with the rainbow suspenders. That's all we know about him. and there's the
muscly guy who loses to Mark.
I think I saw like an Asian girl as well. Like there's
all the
a
people
lot
of color live.
There's a lot of diversity of just like the background extras. But I mean, like just in terms of like the main cast, like I remember all of them. Like even if I forget their names, which I don't think I do. I think I remember everyone's name here. But yeah, I like them all. I can't say the same. Like the first movie, there's definitely, I mean, like we did our cherry picker for that.
Yes,
but, I mean,
we did.
But this one, yeah, like I like everyone. Yeah, in the only thing that I really remember in Paul's speech is that there's a lot of emphasis, and it's not just in this scene. It's just like really throughout the movie. There's like a lot of like menstrual jokes.
Yeah, he said just like, keep clean on your your menstrual cycle. He like says it under his breath because he's uncomfortable with discussing that. And
it keeps coming up as like the screenwriter here is just like, I know what people like jokes about periods and just bleeding down there once a month. That's what kids want these days.
I'm wondering if maybe it was to kind of, maybe for people who needed to believe that Ginny was maybe more virtuous than either you or I might, assume, because I don't consider that to be like a disqualifier or anything like that for her virtue as a final girl, but maybe it was so people could see, she doesn't hook up with Paul, so maybe she's still technically
but there was another line that came up that I think like for the first time, just because I was like watching the movie and just like, God, there's a lot of like talk about menstruation here, but then when we're introduced to Ginny in this scene, yay, she has a very specific, when she like comes rumbling up in her beat up bug,
VW bug,
and he pulls her into the office and is like kind of like, what is this? What does he say? Like, what is this crap, Ginny? And and she's
I said I was sorry.
Yeah, I'm just like right off the bat, like I love her energy and like everything about her. But she says it. She says to him, and I was like listening to this line in a different way because she's just like, no, I said I was sorry, and just like, but like here I am. We're open today, and I promise I'll never be late again. I'm just like, is this another like allusion to me menstruating?
I did not perceive that. Maybe because she does punch it. Like the way you're saying it is exactly on point. Because it's. I just thought it was her condescending to him because she knows she can.
Yeah,
but
she's so...
that's an interesting layer built in. Because I certainly, watching this movie, don't believe that night in the cabin was the first night they ever spent together. I think the two of them have definitely hooked up before and have definitely consummated this relationship, as it were. and
No,
everything,
I full on
because-
believe that like they're a couple in life outside of this setting, and he hired her as his assistant. And she, came down there just kind of like, okay, we have to have like, because it's all kind of hidden. They don't really, present it in front of
Right.
like of all the counselors. It's just kind of like
Right.
behind the scenes. So it's just like there's professionalism, but it's just like when no one's looking, then we're gonna hook up. But yeah, her sassiness, or I shouldn't call it sassiness, but just it is a very like condescending manner of just every, and like especially when which is like the weirdest cut when because he's like sitting and explaining everything to the people, and she's trying to get the car started and backed up because the place is starting to look like a Burger King, I guess. Right. And all of a sudden he just appears right next to her car, like he like transported, like Paul is really the original like transporting Jason of just like showing up randomly.
Paul is arguably the scariest character in this movie.
Well, I'd say that no, Paul's like a cool boss, he like lets everyone get away with shit, and like he's like, these kids smoke better dope than I do, like
that's why I think like his speech at the beginning is kind of like something he does because he knows he's going to lose control at some point, but he wants to at least give the illusion to anybody who might buy into it that he's a figure of authority and that he's a boss. Because have you ever had a boss like that where they're just kind of like, hey, I'm your boss? It's like, no, you're not. Like that kind of a relationship where it's like, you don't even have to apologize for being late. You're just like, hey, I'm here.
But we also
kind of like Ginny.
Yeah, but we get like the first bit of foreshadowing of like the end of the movie when we find out that it's just like, why don't you try using some of that child psychology on it,
Yeah.
So like,
such
ooh,
a sucker for it.
That's gonna come back for something.
Yeah. But also makes sense why he would hire her also, just in terms of like having somebody who, if experience matters to him, and she's, he's already talking about like her getting her master's later and everything like that, about paying for graduate school and everything, by getting somebody else to fix her car and by buying her a beer.
Yeah. That's another weird, like, it's just like we see the cars in the distance with the
I never heard that line before. I've seen this movie more times than I can even remember, and I never actually zeroed in on that because it's such a transitional point and it's such a non-thing. I had to rewind it and put it on the subtitles.
Yeah, because it felt weird because at that scene they were like cutting up the actual like suspense of Terry. Going before she goes skinny dipping or whatever. But but yeah, then so now we transition to the campfire scene, and which you already talked about. But I will say that I like how every like principal character here is having like a different reaction to the story. Like you see the Jeff and Sandra, and they're like they're kind of like so like intently like listening to it, like it's just like, we gotta like I'm so curious about this, like it's just like this fascination. And then like other like Scott, who's, I guess he's like kind of presented as like the idiot, or he's like looking around like, is something here? Like,
just kind of about trying not to like draw anyone else's attention. Like everybody else seems to be kind of like locking eyes with each other at separate points during that like dolly in and everything toward Paul. But his Scott's cutaway is definitely one of just kind of like, I'm not looking behind my shoulder.
By the way,
I thought I heard something.
That what's the actor's name? Russell
Todd.
He was always like I had the biggest crush on him. Like, like just being as like a closeted like teenager, and just seeing this movie, I'm just like, him, like it's just like, I don't care about anyone else and like any of the other sequels, but it was like he was my favorite.
He made the character bearable. Yeah.
And I was always sad that he seemed to have like the smallest role as well of like any of the like I think he had the least amount of dialogue, the least amount of screen time, but he had such like a presence that it just like you just like, you got him.
in the
But I
hands
still
of a
wanted
less
more.
charismatic
Yeah.
actor, but in the hands of a less charismatic actor, that character would have been a lot more annoying because he does a lot of problematic things. You know, I mean, I know I'm saying this through 2023 eyes and everything like that because it does stand out now. But I remember as a kid, all I thought was, I want to be Terry. You know, I want to be chased around by this beautiful man. You know,
Yeah. Well, now we're kind of like going back because like in the scene where he does the little like Bart Simpson slingshot,
the slingshot,
pebble onto
yeah,
her butt cheek.
yes.
Her response to that is kind of like,
oh,
like,
you
boys will be boys, or just like
exactly.
She's almost like it was like
Again,
she's almost
so
flattered by it, but just like
just kind of like, oh, Scott, like she knew, like they know each other obviously, like this is not their first meeting, but and he hasn't crossed a line per se, but he's definitely doesn't have a problem with dancing around it and stuff, and the fact that he gleans as much joy from it as he does, I am glad to say I don't relate to, but I also like I said, like as a kid, I never understood, you know.
I feel like I honestly feel like he was miscast, and I'm not complaining about that too, because like in that scene it's just like because he does that and then he kind of like steps out from the bushes and it's just like here's this like supermodel he's just kind of like, behold me in all my glory.
But again, it makes him more bearable to me because he at least, another thing is he at least stands a chance with her. You get the impression that like, if he does cut the crap and just kind of like act decent with her, like maybe he'll go, okay, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but just because we're talking about the character and because there is so little, you know, to his screen presence, when we're in the lodge with all of them like hanging out and everything like that, with the chess set and with, you know, the this and the that and establishing these characters more so, the fact that he's being persistent with Terry and asking her to dance and she doesn't want to and she seems kind of like, you know, like not interested. The fact that he immediately moves to Muffin, to the dog, and picks her up and starts dancing with her and talking to her about his life and stuff. I remember as a kid, I still have the response when I see it now, but I remember as a kid thinking, okay, now I like you. Because you might have been annoying if the only thing to you was trying to get the girl's attention and everything like that, you know, by being so aggressive. But the fact that now you're entertaining her by dancing around with a dog and kind of humbling yourself. Like, you know, you're showing us another layer to you, like a guy who's going to focus on a dog, that's endearing, you know. So I don't know, and the fact that we see her reaction to it, she's giggling at it, she seems to be particularly taken with it. It's like, okay, you actually might stand a chance here if you just kind of stop being so persistent and maybe just kind of like, you know, be funny. Just be
I almost wonder if like the two characters that should have hooked up or would have had like a better chance with each other was Scott and Vicky, because they were like the over sexualized ones that were just like kind of there to get laid. But it almost like maybe it was like more of it was like too easy. They needed a challenge, and that's why.
You're at that age. You're most compelled to chase the ones who run away, or at least the ones who put up some kind of resistance, and that's exactly what Terry.
Because I honestly like
are.
because like Vicky is like probably the most like the horniest character in this whole franchise.
Maybe, but at the same time,
I mean, like I'd say maybe like the exception might be like the Ted and
Ted for sure.
No, from part 4.
I know, no, Ted for sure. I knew exactly who you were talking about in final chapter. Yes,
Teddy.
That Ted.
Yeah.
Ted, where the hell's Corkscrew? That Ted.
Yeah. Those
for
two
sure.
characters, but I feel I feel like just in terms of like like if we were to do like a top 10 like the horniest side characters of Friday the 13th, she would be up.
There's also those kids who all they do in New Beginning 5, where all they do is just kind of be all over each other.
But that's
that one
I mean, but that's an
Voorhees.
example of like two. They're just like, we're not going to chase after people who are running away. They're just like, they found each other. They're basically
exactly.
The same person.
But see, that's what also kind of like lends itself to the innocence, because even with I'd argue, especially with 2023 eyes, there's less innocence to Scott. But there is definitely still an innocence that I see in Vicky, because not only with the actress, I wrote her name down somewhere here,
Lauren
Marie Taylor.
Taylor.
Yeah. The fact that she shared in Crystal Lake Memories, I got the Blu-ray right here, but signed by multiple people.
You just like fling it out from nowhere.
Yeah, right. I do that. But for the people who are watching this, you got a visual component. But anyway, it's got the bonus disc too, which is great. But she spoke about, like, as Vicky, like, how many instances on set, both on screen and off screen, it was kind of reiterated to her, you are such a sweet, good little Catholic girl. Because she has that one line in the same scene that we're talking about with, or I guess leading up. It is later. It's not the same scene. Same lodge. Let's put it that way. Where she's talking to Mark later in the movie, where she puts the cigarette, the joint in her mouth. She just says to him, "Toke," and she says, "You can tell," and you're absolutely right. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I don't know what it means. I just saw the line on the page, and I just said it, and people are like, "Do you know what toke means?" She says, "The crew never let me forget it." And the first night that they were actually loading in, because they all stayed in the bunks and everything like that instead of honey wagons or something, because they had bunks. She got into her bunk, and she had never camped before. She was such a city girl. She said, you can never take the Bronx out of the girl or the girl out of the Bronx. And the first night, she believed it was Russell Todd, John Fury, who plays Paul, and Bill Randolph, who played Jeff. They all decided they were going to fuck with her and scare her just as a prank, because they were catching that camp vibe, and they just started scratching their fingernails down the windows of her cabin, and she didn't know what was happening, and she was so scared she screamed and fainted dead away. And they didn't expect that. They didn't know that she was going to be such an easy target. And also, you were talking about, like, the reactions at the campfire. Hers was one of genuine terror. She says, "I'm not acting in that scene. I am genuinely terrified, going, I don't want to be here on this campfire. I feel so exposed." So
but
that innocence all plays through for her character.
Even Ginny in that scene, because, like, the way that she's looking at it, like, you can already see, like, she's listening to it, like, with empathy, which is kind of like how she approaches it later on. So it's just like every character kind of like having a different reaction to it, and that's why it's so upsetting that, I mean, like, it's Amy Steele's life. She can do whatever she wants with it, but I'm like, I really would have loved to see her, continue acting and being in things, because
we all would,
because, like, you, she is my favorite of, like, the final girls of Friday the 13th, and I think that she is. I mean, I can't remember what we did for our cherry picker after dark. I think she was in the top 10.
She was high. She was up there, yes.
You'll have to subscribe on my Patreon under the Freddy Krueger tier to see all of the After Dark episodes. But we did rank, I think it was like 86 final girls.
Or something like that.
It was a
over
high number.
80 final girls, and
she did very well, because we both
it was that really was liked her, an interesting
a big tier ranking, But
that was an undertaking, and we did over the summer, right? So you can go back in the backlog and, like, look at, like, what there's tons of episodes available and
already.
That's one.
That's one of them. And that one might have been my favorite to do, because it was such a big undertaking. But she is, like, she's so good. She's also in April Fool's Day. Which is also from the same producers of Friday the 13th. And I don't really know. I know she was in the remake, the television remake of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, because you told me that. Yeah, I'm just like, I'm never going to watch that.
She's the neighbor.
And then you're just like, Amy Steele has a bit role in it. I'm just like, I might need to see this now. And you're like, no, she has like 2 scenes. And I'm just like,
yeah,
still,
she's good in them. She's really good. She plays these newlyweds, I guess, or they seem like just like a young couple who live next door to the Hudsons, and she's the one who gets, kind of like the door shut in her face, as it were, and everything like that. She's really good. And also, she did an episode of Family Ties where Michael J. Fox's character fell in love with her. She was like an older woman, and he was just kind of like a notch on her bedpost, and broke his little teenage heart. Yeah,
that harlot. She just has such like a natural ability about her, just like in her acting, that it's like I mean, I don't remember April Fool's Day very much, but just like the way that she plays this character here, I immediately, like within like seconds of her being on the screen, like that's why it was different from like I'd say Alice in part one, where I just like still wasn't sure. Like you said, you knew Alice was the final girl because like she was the first one that got like her close-up shot. Yes. But like Ginny just had that energy about her, whereas I say like Sandra just being like, this is spooky, like that, like, and just like, oh, you're just
that's
you're
not
just
a final
fodder.
girl.
Yeah.
And everybody else who had sat down like seemed generally kind of, but the fact that she doesn't kowtow to the figure of authority, the male figure of authority who's present like around, and she seems like in a couple weeks she'll be running this place. That's what I feel.
She's really the brains of the operation, and like I can just see there's probably like Paul just like provided, like there were no murders or anything, like the whole summer went on as usual. I can just see like Paul like losing his mind and be like, I don't know what I'm doing, and Ginny just being like, Paul, it's okay. Yeah. Just like take a deep breath, relax.
Here I am.
Yeah, you've got nothing to worry about.
Yeah, and he could become like her most noted underling, but he's definitely I mean, like maybe she'll let him think he's in charge, but no, she's gonna be in charge.
And in that campfire scene, because like after they do the whole fake scare thing with Ted jumping up with the spear and the and I guess Jesus. I guess they didn't even bother getting like novelty spears. They got an actual spear, like an actual weapon. I mean, I assume, because I did notice like in the lodge, it seemed like there was some machetes and stuff on the wall, or just like weapons. So maybe that's where it came from. But just
Ginny's chainsaw.
It's just interesting. It's not a safe environment, and just in terms of implements hanging around. But he obviously, I mean, Paul is trying to do his little razzle dazzle thing, like make him seem like he's the authority figure, but also that he's fun. He's like a fun manager, and also like impress Ginny, because he's just like, so what'd you think? And she's like, second act needs work, or whatever the fucking thing is. And then when they're in the lodge, they're playing chess, and she just easily just like, she's like, wrong again, white man. And just like, I'm gonna go to bed. Like, I don't have time for this shit anymore.
Absolutely. The girl in the company of these other these other counselors and whatnot, who doesn't necessarily, and that's another thing that makes me kind of glom onto her, is the fact that it's just the fact that she doesn't really seem to need the company of other people in order to kind of like be at peace with herself. Like, she'll have fun, but she'll also be like, I'm done, I'm ready to go to bed now. And I totally identify with that energy. Just and like
she also and it feels so effortless too. Like, it doesn't feel like she's putting it on, or just like trying too hard. Whereas I feel like maybe another similar Friday final girl with like that kind of like spunky energy could Megan from part 6, but with her I feel like that's kind of like just a mask that she wears of just trying to rebel against dad, or make like boys interested in her, where I feel like Ginny is just like, she's just naturally like, she's like a tomboy, but she can also just be sexy and smart and sassy, and like go toe to toe with all the men, and still like kick their asses.
And still be someone who speaking as a man, I would feel absolutely safe with, and absolutely like, if you tell me to do something, I'm going to do it. Yeah. Like I'm going to trust you, because you are just that reliable. You just have that air about you. Yeah,
and also like not in an intimidating way either.
No,
like she just feels very approachable, and I don't know like how much
clearly.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that is Ginny and how much of that is Amy, but it's just like, it doesn't matter. I just like I would even go as far as just like, that's the character. She may as well be Amy Steele.
In Crystal Lake Memories, in the interview there, and she's probably said it in other interviews prior, she said like there wasn't really a sense of like build a character and create like a backstory and do like all of that, even though she did some of that. But she said really the sense that I got was just bring yourself to the set and try to do things the way you would do them to the best of your ability. So that's what I would do, and I'm like, that's why we like you so much and why it works, because everything that you're projecting into the camera is done, almost subconsciously, like you're just being you and just doing the job, and we're watching you get the job done. But also I can't remember if it was one of the producers or if it was a screenwriter said that once she was in, they were still forming the script and everything. So once they knew they had her, much of that role was built around how they perceived her, and built around like what okay, this is what she's bringing to the table, let's push that to the forefront. And I don't know if other final girls necessarily got that same kind of benefit, or if other movies obviously didn't have the benefit of an Amy Steele who could just show up and just
it could have also just been like, from a production standpoint, like especially like Paramount is just sort of like, we don't care about these movies. Like I feel like maybe they cared about them more at the beginning, but as it went on, they're just like, we don't really need you. Like Amy Steele, like obviously they wanted to have her back for part 3, and that never happened because she turned it down. But I think in that moment they're just like, whatever, we can do this without you. Like you're not the star of the show, Jason is. And I feel that, as much as like I love this franchise, I mean, love it, like I like it. The really the missing link is kind of that continuous foil to Jason. And I mean, even if it wasn't going to be Ginny, just like somebody, because I mean, I don't really count Tommy, because that's literally like 3 different interpretations of him that are all like completely different.
Yes.
So I feel like already from at least at this point, like Ginny works because she does have that empathy for him, that comes in handy later on. But it like she's just a character that is so watchable that like she could have very well been like, you talk about the Scream franchise and how important the trio is, like, characters like Sydney and Gail, even more so than Ghostface itself. Ghostface is just sort of like a visage of like a threat. And that's kind of like what Jason is too, because Jason, I mean, like he does have very specific characteristics, and I'd argue that he is deeper than just like kind of like this big lummox. But like in this franchise, you really are missing out on that personality of a final person to kind of to bring us along. And I feel that Ginny would have been like a great kind of starting off point with 2 to just like go forward if they were going to continue to do Jason movies like they did.
Yeah. It's another component of a successful final girl that you can have, that I think I observe in the strongest final girls, which is why she's the strongest in this franchise for me, which is some kind of insight and possibly even empathy for, or at least scope of like what it is to be the heavy. Like I think about it in terms of like the line that Heather Langenkamp delivers at the end of Nightmare on Elm Street. I know you too well, Freddy. And I'm just like, yeah, you do. and you carry that through in every other exchange you have with him. But and then even thinking of Sydney in Scream. Even though the killers change, Ghostface is never the same person twice, or people. Every time she speaks to them from this point of view, or not every time, but like especially as she grows into the latter sequels, actually, she develops this ability to speak to them with a kind of shorthand, like, okay, so I know, I've been through this before. I've heard it all. I just like, you're just like, whatever it is that's motivating you, it's not new. It's not special. It's just like the latest excuse for you to be as destructive as humanly possible. And that kind of insight and that kind of making room for I don't know, for at least that much understanding of the people who are oppressing you makes you more smarter and makes you more capable and makes you a more interesting person to watch. So that's another reason why I adore her.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I'll forget about it later on. But I mean, and this can kind of segue into our discussions of how the supernatural element and like what you feel like the connection is between 1 and 2. Do you think that this could have been a franchise, because this was discussed with Halloween, like with Season of the Witch, like being an anthology thing? Because I mean, in a way, Friday the 13th Part 2 to 1, it's like it's a different threat, like a different villain, like it's the same location, that maybe Friday the 13th could have been like an anthology franchise like that. Like maybe it could have even all been set like around Camp Blood, but just been like, you know, every Friday the 13th weird shit happens. Like there's some new thing that's going on. Like what do you think that franchise would have looked like for you? Like do you think you would have responded to it as well?
Well, I think it would have looked a lot more like the Friday the 13th television series that happened in the 80s, which was not connected to Camp Crystal Lake at all. And it was like kind of like a cursed item of the week. You know, like we have this old curio shop that, you know, like has like all of these things or all these, you know, these items that are like kind of like spread throughout.
So it's like Ed and Lorraine Warren. Like she's just like they're
basically, like the Conjuring, before the Conjuring. With a through line. I mean, you followed some protagonists through those episodes and everything like that, even though I think it switched up at one point. I still haven't even seen the series. One of these days I will. But
I mean, that premise would obviously rob us of Jason Voorhees, but I feel like if anything, like that would have, I mean, I think that they probably wouldn't have ever even considered that, because it's just like they had created such a simple and probably relatively like cheap template to follow for these movies, and that's why, you know, like we have sequel after sequel that were churned out. But like
that's why you can like, if you like a writer, you can bring them back, and if they don't want to do it anymore, you find a new writer, no problem, and it's a new project. That'd be interesting. But I don't know.
So that kind of brings us to what you were just like how your headcanon for how Jason is even possibly alive still. Do you want to? You can describe it better than.
Well, it's not even something that I still carry with me, because I think I know these movies too well, Zach Cherry. But I think, I mean, the backstory, you know, like what happened behind the scenes. So I think I watch them largely from that frame of mind now, as far as their lack of a linear through line and their crazy timeline. But ultimately, when I was a kid, I was looking. This was I believe the first franchise that I was following up, the Nightmare franchise, when I had completed all of those movies. And I was like, I need to go through another franchise that has multiple movies. So I rented the first 2 movies with my sister, and we watched them. And I remember getting through this one and thinking like, okay, so obviously Mrs. Voorhees was killing all of those counselors in the first movie to try and bring back Jason. Like, I guess his body just stayed, or maybe his spirit, and then his body just materialized. But she was obviously like working with some kind of like supernatural, you know, forces to conjure him and bring him back. And it worked, but she didn't live to see that. So when he came back, maybe he aged at a rapid rate and became the age he would have been had he lived, or something like that. Because I did believe that the events at the end of the first movie were not a nightmare, but a flashback, you know, or a, you know, kind of traumatic nightmare of, you know, like a recall of something that actually happened. So I thought like, okay, so like once he got kind of like, it's so funny because it went really deep. It was like, so once he got out of the lake, it must have been like when man first kind of emerged from the ocean, like he was like, he had gills and he had to acclimate to like breathe again and like kind of like, you know, grow limbs and grow posable thumbs and stuff like that. So I thought like, so Jason must have like just kind of like caught up with the world around him because maybe time is frozen in the lake. And so I thought like he grew up, and then, but he had somehow like maybe just as he was like coming back to life in the lake, witnessed the murder of his mother, saw Alice, had some kind of weird sixth sense about where she must be in her proximity. The same way like Michael Myers always knows how to find Laurie regardless of the timeline or his bloodline, you know, like the people. He always knows where they are. And so I thought like, okay, cool. So that's what he's doing. He's going, he's finding her, and he's basically like reprimanding her for like doing what she, like tit for tat. Here's my mother's head. Look what you did to her. Look at it. And then just wanted to return to Camp Crystal Lake and just kind of be left alone, which is why he pulls the log or the big trunk out in front of the road. And when people start trespassing again, it starts out almost like a morality tale, because the first people, or among the first people he kills, are Crazy Ralph, which
is the next scene of peeping Ralph,
right? And then also the cop for going in territory he does not belong in. Well, no,
I was always like so curious of like how he killed Ralph. Like, was he like hanging and I could just see his legs like dangled up on like some branches, and he was like hanging down, and because like you don't see, because he's got like the wire and it just kind of like goes over Ralph's neck, but like the thing is like you can't just swing a thing through the tree, so I would have to imagine that he was like hanging from like up in the tree rather than being behind it.
Or maybe I always thought he was standing on something, had already pulled the wire around the tree while Ralph was, like he probably did one of these, like a slap bracelet, like just kind of like whipped it around silently because Ralph was too busy, jerking off or whatever. And slowly lowered it, and then like around his neck and everything like that. If that makes any sense.
I don't know. Ralph was
the visual component
way
might
too
help
soon.
here. He should have existed in a lot more movies. He should have been there for at least all the Paramount ones.
He is the opening narrator of Part 7, which I did not know about for the longest time. But what's interesting is that this is the first Friday the 13th episode that we're recording after the news that we're going to be getting a prequel television series, which I still don't know how I feel about that. But I mean, perhaps those theories will somehow work into it. Personally,
I doubt it.
Personally, I just think that it was more of like a Romeo-Juliet situation where Jason died and Mrs. Voorhees just assumed that he was dead, sort of thing. But Jason was like faking it, and then he was gonna be like, surprise, I'm still alive. But then she died, and then he came back to life. But rather than him killing himself, he was just like, all right, I'm gonna kill like other people because that seems more practical. Because suicide is, what's the line in Scream, or just the bitchy cheerleader? Remember when she's just like, homicide is
suicide
is so
much more, homicide is a much healthier expression of rage or something like that. You would know better than I would. But
no,
all I remember is the gesture, her hands on her head, like, and homicide is a much that suicide is out this year, and homicide is a much more healthy expression of her anger or something like that. You are pathetic, but
Ricky Lake.
Anyway, but
we just needed those two girls to like just like be rowing by on a canoe and just like witnessing the whole thing and being like, well, clearly, like, suicide is
we need those girls in every movie. Oh my God, they should come back in Scream. Screevy. Oh, that's right. It already has its own thing. Yes, I forgot. I haven't seen the trailer, so I haven't seen it as much as you have. But
I've
anyway,
just watched it. When it came out, I still haven't watched it. But
I haven't seen it at all. But anyway, getting back to this one.
So Ralph is dead.
I always thought that Peeping Ralph was paying, the first time I saw the movie, I thought he was paying for his sins the same way I thought that Russell Todd's character Scott was kind of like paying for his. And then I thought, oh, how smart. They're just, as he continues to kill, and we won't go into it, but just as Jason, just to finish up the theory, as Jason continues to kill the more romantic couples who were, getting it on, or the ones who were like definitely into it, it's like, okay, so no one is safe. That's really smart. But then towards the end, when we revealed that altar in his home, I thought, oh, so he's doing the same thing his mother did. She must have taught him, like, I don't know if it's voodoo or what kind of black magic they use or whatever, but if he kills enough people, the same way if she killed enough people, she could bring him back, he can bring her back. So he's trying to bring her back. Well, and that's why all the bodies are piled in front of the altar.
I feel like Crystal Lake is not a big lake. And so if a child drowned there, I'm sure that they'd be able to recover the body. And also, like, wouldn't a dead body float to the top? This is, like, serious question. Like if you drown in a lake, because there's no current.
The headcanon for me was always that they never found his body.
Okay.
That was always my headcanon.
Because, okay, I guess it is. Is it kind of established that his body was never found? Is it like said
no,
by
not at all? In the first movie he is dead.
Yeah, because
like,
maybe
they
there's
made the first movie with every intention that he was.
Yeah, because
dead.
maybe like what had happened was like he was buried, like he had a funeral and all that, but then Mrs. Voorhees dug up his body and then brought him to a shrine. Ooh. You know, it was like just him, like in maybe that same little hut in the woods. Of just like all the candles around, and maybe his like swim shorts like laid out there like with her sweater at the end.
But
I like the idea of the rebirth out of the lake better than him just kind of coming to life on the altar. However, for anyone who's played the game, the Friday the 13th game, you'll know that every time that you start a level, he always starts in the cabin. So I don't know if there's like some sort of symbolic meaning to that's where he's kind of born.
I don't know. Yeah. But also another thing occurred to me with this movie. I was just kind of thinking like, what if he was alive the whole time? But because I just kept thinking about like, I have to go back and listen to Betsy Palmer's speech in the first movie to hear exactly what she says. Because if I can find a way,
he wasn't a very good swimmer.
Yeah, but if I can, she's a New Englander now. But no, if she can, he wasn't a very good swimmer. We can go now. Betty Davis.
They never were paying attention.
Look what you did to him. Look what you did to him. Anyway, I gotta stop. Okay, I have to listen. Because that was the line.
Walks
actually
into the cabin, just sees like all the shit that Alice did. Just, what a dump.
What a dump. But okay, but the "look what you did to him" line, that was the one that occurred to me because I'm like, what if it wasn't that he was killed? Like he drowned for sure. Yeah. But what if he survived, but she kept it a secret? And, you know, wanted to protect him and decided you're too good for the world. So she kept him hidden in the woods. And that's how he was able to witness her dying. This is major headcanon. But
you're just making this up right now. Watch, this is going to be
just while I was watching the movie. While I was watching the movie, I was screening. I was like, what if he did survive and she knew it, but she kept him safe, what she thought was safe, and tried to keep the grounds closed so nobody would ever disturb him. And then when she got killed, that's when he... But it still doesn't explain...
So it was more of a way of just like he did survive... Yeah. But it was sort of like she took it upon herself to sort of, you know, almost be this like martyr of just like, you know, my son is dead and I'm going to use, even though he's not, I'm going to use that as an excuse to make sure that this never happens to anyone else's child if it did actually happen.
Right. Because also that look what you did to him. It's also for me, what if it's an expression of look what you did to him. He's a thing living in the woods now. He was a little boy, you know, living among other people. I was a mother. I had a job, and now my job is to keep him, you know, in a shed.
I mean, honestly, I would not put anything past that woman. Like she is clearly fucking deranged. But just watch. This is gonna be the twist of the prequel series. Like they're gonna find a way to make it canon with everything. It's just gonna be like, that's the twist.
There will be an Earth 2. There will be. But also, because that's another thing that I noticed, in addition to the toilet, which is kind of like the most memorable thing about the Jason's shack, the first time we visited, the only other thing, arguably, only other thing that I noticed in there that I never noticed before was a high chair. And I was just kind of like, so did he find that? Or was that like his high chair and he's still infantilized, so he just keeps it set up in
maybe
the
it was like a... now I'm thinking of like Halloween Resurrection of Busta Rhymes like staging the house with the chair with the chains on it, and that was like Mrs. Voorhees is just like, I'm gonna set up this cabin with like all these things that never, or maybe it was like a House of Wax 2005 thing. So many possibilities.
So many possibilities. But also they make because we were still talking about the death of Peeping Ralph.
Yeah.
Not from Crazy Ralph to Peeping Ralph. Now, I like that Ginny, again, it's another allusion to, it's not a menstrual joke, or I guess the payoff is in the next scene, but just the fact that she's like, Paul, there's something I think I need to tell you. And we're like, what? And then in the next scene, we see her in bed, fully clothed, and it's scrawled in lipstick on the mirror, beware of bears, which tells me, okay, so maybe nothing happened because maybe she had her friend, as it were.
Yeah. And Flo came to visit Camp Crystal
But do you
Lake.
think that would
Camp
be a
Blood,
deal breaker?
you know?
But do you think that would be a deal breaker for them? That's one thing I'm curious about.
I don't
Camp
know.
Blood. That's funny. I just heard that. That should have been scrawled. Yeah. No, that's really aggressive. If he would have scrawled Camp Blood on her mirror, that would have been like, oh my God, you piece of shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like it because it's another little kind of like layer built in. It's an exchange that doesn't need to be there, but it just tells me like, oh, this is what's going on with them. I don't know. It's behavioral. I'm all about that.
I don't know. I like them as a couple. I think like they're my favorite final couple of this franchise, and we know that there's a lot of shitty final couples in I mean, part 8. Fuck, I will never live those two down. But
oh God.
Yeah, there's some scenes coming up. We'll get to them, but yeah, I guess now we're the next day. So now I guess we're Friday the 13th proper here. They're all out doing their little run about thing. I don't know what they're just training, doing cardio, or whatever.
Right.
And this is where Muffin sadly departs
in one of the most humorous jump cuts.
Again, like just Steve Miner, and is just like, let's go from like the threat of the dog being killed to like now we're serving hot dogs. Maybe that's Muffin on the grill, you know.
But also the way that they establish, because we follow Jeff and Sandra into the grounds of Camp Blood and everything like that, and they discover like the little would-be corpse question mark of Muffin, and even they're speculating whether it's Muffin or not. And I like the fact that after they get caught and after the whole exchange with Paul and I just lost his name, Deputy Winslow, and all of that we covered. But the fact that after they're dismissed and they're walking back down like toward the lake, just kind of like, you know, discussing, do you think that was Muffin, or whatever they say? And I think he says like, she says, do you think we should tell Terry? And he says, no, I don't even, he says, I don't want her to think about it. I don't even want to think about it. Something like that.
As far as I'm concerned, I didn't see nothing.
Exactly.
I love how like they don't even notice like the cop car with like the obvious lights flashing that's like right next to them. But that
the little detectives who choose voluntary ignorance at the very end of it, and I like that. I
don't know, and that whole scene of like with Paul reprimanding them or whatever, like that's why I like that character so much, because he's just like, he's playing it like, it's like, like taking this very seriously, officer. Like he's almost like just as kind of sassy as Ginny is. Like that's why maybe they're such a good pair together. But he's just like, officer, I'm hearing what you're saying. And he's just like, why don't you two run along? Like I'll catch up with you at dinner. He's like, well, so what? You're not going to reprimand them or anything?
Yes.
And he's just like, and not even like missing a beat. He's like, Ginny, make sure that like the line from
no seconds on
seconds on like they can have first. It's almost like that's like to add insult to injury. Like they're still getting dessert, but they were misbehaving, so they're not gonna get seconds. And it's just,
and this bit is working on Ginny. She's chuckling. He's winning her over here. Yeah. She likes this side of him.
Yeah.
So that's cool, and then we go into the night of the full moon, which is
there was a few things. Well, we missed the I guess like the little interactions on the beach. There's just a little scene there of just like the care. You know, we see Vicky, she's like shading herself next to Mark in his wheelchair. Yeah. Like she's just sidled right up to him. Like she's making it so obvious like that she just wants to fuck him. And they're telling like jokes. There's something about like Beethoven.
Well, first Ginny tells the joke that nobody laughs at. What's red and green and travels at 100 miles an hour, and she says a frog in a blender. Ha, not funny. And then he's like, what's brown and sits on a piano bench? Yeah. And your face. And then
your feet. That was Vicky, right?
That was Vicky, the Bronx. Yeah. Can't take the Bronx out of the girl. But and he's just like, no, Beethoven's last movement. And they're like, oh, ew, gross. And
that was like this, like the the first movie had Marcy when they cut up the snake, and she's like, well, I guess we know what's for dinner. And they're like, oh, Marcy.
Or Nettie. And there's a lot of practical jokes going on still with these kids.
This is probably the most Friday the 13th part 1 that that part 2 does, and it's just like that little scene of them joking on the beach.
Well, it also sets them up, regardless of how I guess sympathetic we can be to them, or how much we can like them as characters. It does set up a very good argument, I guess, if you feel like a Voorhees, which is a very us and them kind of thing. Like, no matter how likable the kids are, there is this carefree, all-American, like, let's just have fun with each other and just be frivolous and, not invest any meaning and too much meaning in anything. Let's just kind of like, ha, 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 sunning ourselves and swimming and laughing and playing pranks. And I understand how something like that, if you're on the outside of it, can look and feel oppressive, And again, it makes them, at this stage in the franchise, kind of sympathetic characters or sympathetic killers, like anybody who's like an outsider looking in, just kind of going like, look what you did to him, or whatever Jason's thinking, which who knows.
And then just with like the death of Winslow, because there's just 2 things I wanted to hit on here. The shot. It's such a quick, like, split-second shot when he's driving down, and just, like, through his vantage point, like, through the windshield, we see Jason kind of, like, dart off into the bushes. And that's really the first time we see him, because, like, we see, like, the potato sack over his head and, like, the overalls and the
like his whole figure, not just the jeans and the boots. The first scene.
Which is already like, because the first movie had it was a mystery of just like, who is this figure hidden in the shadows. Where here it's just like, that's our monster. But it was like, again, they're just like, we're just gonna show a little bit of it, because it's not until like way later on, or later on I should say, because it's a short movie, that like we see the full on potato sack like in our face. But I always liked that shot. Like, it's just such a creepy shot of him darting into the woods there, because it's just like, and it's also the spells the death of this character, because he had to go off chasing after. He just could have just driven home and been on his merry way, to write citations for years to come. But and then I was just gonna say I guess this. I mean, I don't know how long it took them to make Halloween 2. Or when the production on that was going on, because this came out May 1st, and I just like there's so many. Every time I see like his death of like the hammer in the back of the skull, it just reminds me of Mr. Garrett, the security guard, because he's like similar, like mustachioed, stocky security guard officer hybrid who's just like walking around like, they have the authority to run this place, but like really they're just, cannon fodder that's gonna get taken out. So I always like drew so many comparisons to those 2 characters. I mean, they're like interchangeable for me. So I don't know if maybe Halloween, because we know that it, like, the only reason that Halloween 2 exists is because of Friday the 13th, and even like maybe Friday the 13th part 2, because that was like the first franchise that was just kind of like, oh, we're gonna keep going with this. And then it was the Accads or the Yablons or whoever were just like, well, we gotta make our own sequel, sort of thing. So it almost got to this point where if the time frame is right, like I think it might have been that, first Sean Cunningham is like ripping off Halloween, but then it kind of like comes full circle, and now Halloween is ripping off Friday the 13th.
Totally.
Yeah.
Although I will argue that on paper the pitch for Halloween 2, I think definitely like answers a lot more questions that I would have as a studio mogul than the pitch for Friday the 13th Part 2.
Okay, here's another toughie.
Okay.
What out of Friday the 13th Part 2 and Halloween 2, which do you prefer? What do you think is not even prefer, but what do you think is the better movie?
I would say Friday the 13th Part 2, just because you mentioned in so many words the pacing and the momentum of it. There were a lot of dead spots for Halloween 2 for me. Overall, I adore the experience of watching the movie, sitting through it. But there are some points where I'm just kind of like, all right, I can get up and go do whatever I do. I don't really get up at any point during this movie as a rule. There's nothing that stands out to me as kind of like downtime. It's very easy to sit through this movie for me. So I would say that. How about you?
That's very fair, and I agree that it's like it's a very like breakneck speed pace to get through this. But I would probably go for Halloween 2 because I just think like the atmosphere of that movie is so masterful. For everything that it is, and just how it also feels like an extension to the first movie. Like I know that like you can even say that this is obviously an extension to Friday the 13th Part 1, but I just love how I just love the kind of like the gimmick almost of just like of Halloween 2 taking place on the same night, and you know having that same kind of vibe. So I feel like I would always. I mean, it's by a slight margin that I prefer that. Like if I had to run through like all the horror sequels and rank them, I think Scream 2 would obviously like probably be at the top for me, and like I think even Child's Play 2 would probably be pretty high, but I would definitely say that Halloween 2 would beat out Friday the 13th Part 2 by a hair.
Okay, cool. I as far as the experience, I mean, I love both of them, and I will use that word love for both of those movies. I watch them annually, at least, and get a hankering to see both of them. But I stand by what I said.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, so now day turns to night. We got the full moon. Yes. I'll let you continue because you were getting there, but I pulled the rug out from under you.
Well, okay, because a big thing for me was also like wondering about the retribution here, because at watching Scotty's kind of tactless pursuit of Terry, and
I think I'm gonna see behind.
Yeah, right. But again, like I watched that and I'm just kind of like, God, if Russell Todd. If I were age appropriate and Russell Todd were like all about that and like yawning to try and like stick around with me, I'd be like, damn, what am I waiting for? Like, come on, break the seal on the cat box. Do it now. But, but also there were other things in the evening. It's kind of like all over the evening, which is the rest of the movie here.
Yeah.
But,
from this point on, because there's like barely any movie. Like I think this is the 45-minute mark, but it's just like there's more movie has passed than there is movie that's left, and I just feel like it's just like all like a quick momentum from this point on.
The calm before the storm.
Yeah,
I mean, because even the kills aren't really all that tense. I mean, we made the Jaws noises with the boom 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 for Terry's. I mean,
dip,
she strips down naked and gets into the water, and then while she's exiting the water, we hear the Jaws theme. So obviously they don't want tension necessarily there. They're giving us something in the score to laugh at. And I'd argue that even her discovery, because we witness Scott getting killed while he's hanging upside down, you pervert. His retribution. I think that seemed, if she was satisfied with that retribution, and with I really like watching her say like, "You're gonna cut the crap." He's like, "Yes, anything, I promise." I'm like, okay, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's see if he behaves differently. Unfortunately, we never really get to see it pan out. But her discovery of him, because we witnessed the kill and everything like that, it's not terribly scary. It's not. There's a lot. Yeah.
well, we're still like in early days of Friday the 13th. This is also not Tom Savini, because he didn't do 2 and 3. He came back for 4. Yes. And it's Paramount. Like, everything is already severely cut down. She gets an off-screen kill. Like, it's just like it's almost like the mom in the final chapter, where it's just like, look over here, like, okay, and that's all we need. Like, we'll show her body later on.
Only for no good reason. I know that Joe Zito didn't want the mother's death to be on screen, like, on purpose, because he's like, that's not what these movies are about. Yeah. But Terry getting killed would have been exactly what these movies are about. But I also am fond of her staring down the barrel of the camera and just letting out a shrill, incredible shriek. Like, it is great.
Yeah. Well, and the movie also does the same thing that it did in the first one, where it's like the POV shot, and we don't know if we're just kind of like, what, like, we're just a tree in the woods watching these characters, or it's the actual killer, because she walks by and she throws a towel, which I'm just like, again, like, why are you, like, you put the towel in the hamper, you're just throwing it, like, you're littering in the woods at this point. She's getting rid of a towel in the fucking forest. I just imagine, like, Jason standing there. Like, I'm thinking of, like, Jason in Freddy versus Jason when Catherine Isabel, like, flicks the cigarette on his mask.
Yes.
I just see, like, there should have been a shot of just, like, Jason on the other end of the camera, and there's just, like, a towel that gets thrown on his head.
That just whips him in the face, and then he's like,
now I'm gonna kill you. But his death, he's getting sliced like across the neck with the dull end of the machete too, and there's something about that, like, that's kind of like probably the one kill or like moment of like gore or anything in the scene that like disturbs me the most. I don't know what it is, because it's like, we know that it's the dull end, but it like clearly like delivers some pretty nasty damage there. And just being like on that part of the neck, it just like, it always like makes me wince a little.
Oh, yeah. That's good to know.
I know, right? I don't like any sort of like veins or like windpipes or like anything like that being sliced into, like that like grosses me out.
Like windpipe, I understand, like specifically windpipe, but like that, it's so off to the side. I don't know. It doesn't bother me. It kind of just looks like, but that's okay. Cool. That's cool. What does bother me is what follows is a character who's not even billed in the credits or on IMDb as uncredited. A lot of times they do that these days. Is the waitress character over in the bar on the outskirts of the campgrounds, who's just looks like she's having a night. She's just got this. I'm so interested in her. She's my Sandy equivalent for this movie. Sandy the waitress.
Well, we spend like so much time just like following, because she's like picking up beer bottles and carrying them around before we kind of like track along with her until we get to our trio of important characters.
And this is the thing, because we've kind of been on this ride with her, just collecting the beer bottles with this completely I don't know, just over it expression on her face. Like, she is carrying the burden of the working class on that tray, know? And she knows she has the rest of the night ahead of her. People are going to be loud. People are going to be obnoxious. Who knows who's going to tip? Like, I get all of that from her performance. And then for her to wander into the shot with, or to take the shot with her to the trio and to see fucking Ted with his beer bottles as binoculars over his eyes. Like, oh, I'm being funny. And I'm just like with her thinking, Jesus Christ. This is the last thing I want to have to deal with right now. You're not entertaining. You're not charming. Whatever you're doing is just, would you just pay and get the fuck out of here? Or order another beer? Like, here you're just trying to get my attention and I'm not about this.
I feel like she was probably... because that was a real establishment. It got torn down. I think soon after filming, was it? But I just think that they probably were scouting locations and they went there and they're just like, let's get someone who actually works here. Like, I feel like maybe she was an actual server, because she doesn't feel like she's acting there. Like, that just feels like she's just like, take from like your real experience, and she's just like, I wouldn't want the bar to fall down on you, or whatever she says.
Yeah, right.
It's just like the delivery is just like, it's not good, but it's just like, that's probably how an actual server would say that. It's just like, fuck you.
Yeah.
And then of course,
Yeah.
and then being like, I think she likes you, and like, yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Well, because even his line, I had to go back again and watch it with subtitles. His first line, when he's still got the fucking bottles on his eyes, he says, I think I'm in love. No, just tremendous affection. Like, it's not even funny, and it's not even, but it's still kind of like a put down. Like, I think I'm in love. Oh, wait, you're not pretty enough for me to be in love with. Like, I mean, it's whatever it is. It doesn't work. It's not charming. Yeah. Maybe it would be if Russell Todd delivered it. I don't know. But the fact, that she delivers that line and everything, I feel that. And the fact that they're sitting there like, yeah, I think she does like me. It just feels like, it goes hand in hand with Scott's, ill-fated pursuit of Terry for me, in terms of like things that could have been clues as to not necessarily a morality tale, but just kind of like this is what happens to men who behave this way. Like if Ted had to pay some kind of ultimate mortal lethal price, which he doesn't. He gets to live on. Yeah. I wish he could have gotten a death scene, because it would have made more sense for the narrative.
I was surprised that he didn't, because he just kind of disappears out of the movie. But like when he first showed up, like the "Welcome to God's Country" line, like I immediately saw him like, oh, he's getting killed so badly. Like you just see him and it's just like he's the new Ned almost. It's just
and then the prank at the campfire was like another like, okay, we're building it up. Like you are now like,
well, that's an extension of Paul,
the visage of Jason. Yeah. But I feel like you're defiling this image. You're making light of this tragic story.
I don't dislike.
You're gonna get dead.
Yeah, I don't dislike Ted as much as you do, obviously. But I definitely, I definitely feel like he probably, like just the fact that he was sort of set up as this character and then just sort of disappeared. And I think that he was, when they were gonna bring back Ginny for 3, like he was gonna be brought back as well. And then obviously that fell through because she was out. So maybe he would have got randied in Friday the 13th.
Oh, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
That would have been cool. But because Stu Charno, the actor, has also said in interviews, I think he said it in both His Name Was Jason documentary, which preceded Crystal Lake Memories. I think he said it in both interviews, but because it's the same interview, but I think they included it in both. He said I think his character was originally slated to die, and then they must have rehearsed it or something. And he said same thing happened to him in Christine. He's like, I don't die good, so they don't let me die on screen a lot because I just don't know how. So they said, okay, we'll just let you live. You just stay back at the bar. In his own headcanon, he believes that he eventually that night won over the waitress, and the two of them kind of shacked up together in the woods.
They went to their after hours out there place. With her.
Yeah. If we ever get like a requel for Friday the 13th that has Ted in its continuity, I would love to see him, and if they can find that waitress. Whether she's a waitress or an actress, whatever she is, if we could find the two of them just running a similar kind of lodge near Crystal Lake, that would be such fan service for me. That's the kind of thing I would be like, like in the movie theater if I saw them on screen. I would really love that. But it's as far as like the if he got killed and it being kind of like a retribution example for the movie to the movie's strength, I think. Another thing that follows that I really, really like, that is kind of like juxtaposing this earnest quality of Ginny as she's discussing Jason seriously in his predicament. Granted, she's probably not doing it in the right venue, but on the right night with the right guys. But the fact that the two males who are supposed to be, she's supposed to be friendly with them, are both completely dismissing her and chuckling about it and rolling their eyes and making light of it. That's another reason why I'm glad Paul disappears, and it makes me wish that Ted would get kind of like punished for it, because it's like kind of like, no, when you experience empathy and really think about like tragedies that happen to people who had tragic lives and tragic ends, like maybe that's to your credit as a human being. Maybe that's something that is a strength when the shit hits the fan, as opposed to these other guys who need to be punished. Like I really believe that. I really wish this could be a morality tale, which I'm always making the argument against. I'm always just kind of like, no, I like that it's chaos and that darkness exists and there is no reason why. But I don't know. There's something about this narrative. Maybe it's because I'm so Team Ginny. But just wanted to bring that up in terms.
Do you
of
think that because I mean I feel like her survival is kind of just more of just like she was fortunate enough to like go to the bar with everyone else and didn't stay behind.
Yeah.
Do you think that like things would have worked out differently for her if she was one of the stay behinds?
Well, then who would be the final girl? If she
Stu.
was
or not Stu,
God.
Ted.
No, because Ted would have been killed. Yeah. Stu. There was a very Stu energy to Ted.
Well, I meant
I'm
like
thinking Scream
actors,
Stu. No, I know, but I'm thinking Scream Stu now. I'm just like, ooh, yeah. There's a kind of like manic Matthew Lillard, like, look at me.
I feel like, I feel like if Ted did survive or just like defeat Jason, it would be totally by accident. Like he would eventually find a way to like come. Like he would probably get in the car drunk and like drive, or the truck that was still behind, and like get behind the wheel, and then it would be like Jason at the end there, and then out of nowhere he would just come plowing down the drive and like hit Jason and be like,
oops,
what happened? Like he would be one of those people that you always discuss, like, the people who fail upwards. Like that would be his kind of like final boy.
Yes, final boy by default. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But no, I think Ginny, I would hope, because also Ginny wouldn't be, if Paul left, she wouldn't have anybody to hook up with, so there would still be kind of like a lack of distraction in a very Victor Millery way for like the first movie. Not a morality tale, but a lack of distraction for her, because she wouldn't be trying to get it on with anybody. She'd just be kind of like, maybe trying to clean up after everybody, just trying to like make sure everything is, locked up tight. And
Ginny in this movie, like because we talked about the first one where kind of like that Laurie Strode energy of just seeing things that nobody else is seeing, because in the first movie it wasn't Alice who was seeing things, it was Marcy. Like Marcy was the seer. She was the one that knew that there was like, what's that over there? Like I thought I saw something, and then of course the whole like blood. She was just predicting Evil Dead 2013. But but in this movie, Ginny, like they appropriately like made her. She's like, even when they're running earlier through the woods, and when they're all doing their training thing, and she's the one that stops and she's just looking around like, I feel a presence. And even when she puts the chainsaw away, she's just like, what's going on here? And it feels like such an overused trope, especially in a lot of these Friday the 13th movies, of just like having that one character just be like, we're just trying to build tension of just like someone's watching. But I think it's appropriate because it sets up the person as like the final girl. And I think it was misused in the first movie to inappropriately give that to the character of Marcy. But here they figured their shit. Like Steve Miner knew, like, why would we have Sandra notice? Like Sandra's too distracted by Jeff that she's not going to notice. Like, and the same thing with like Marcy and Kevin Bacon in the first movie. Like Marcy's not going to realistically be the one to be like, or what's the mirror scene, or just like, you'll always keep playing. and just like, someone there,
I said Lizzie. Yes. I can't do a good Katharine Hepburn. Not as good as Marcy does, but no. Also, I mean, I'm thinking now, like, as you're talking, like, I'm thinking, like, what would Ginny be doing if she stayed behind? Like, again, maybe that speech she gave, like, her head was obviously in that space. And in that moment, as it is in the movie, she's obviously trying to kind of like pull Paul back, maybe even try to communicate to him, this is what pissed me off about your little prank at the campfire last night, kind of thing. But also, I think like if she was already kind of going there, maybe that speech would have been a journal entry, or maybe she would have just kind of seen everybody else seems to be like hooking up. Maybe she would have like wandered along the other side of Crystal Lake, just to kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, be silent and kind of take in the moon, take in the,
Yeah.
the atmosphere and everything.
Yeah, like Jason's characterization is also so much different here than, you know, what it eventually turns out to be. And I feel like Jason here is a lot smarter than what he eventually turns out to be. Like, he's doing like crafty things. I mean, let's talk about I guess the rest of the cannon fodder first, of just like the people who still need to get killed off, which is Mark, who's he's the next one, and he's like, similar to Ralph and like what I was saying of like the impossible like wire like flipped over the tree. It's like we see someone stalking him from behind and no one's there when the camera turns around, but yet this machete just comes flying out of the side there.
Yeah,
that always bugged me.
Well, I mean, again, it's just, for me, I'm just kind of like, cinematically, it's all a misdirect. Even though we can clearly see that there's nobody behind him, what I think is like, okay, so what they're trying to do is create an air. They're putting us inside his experience. Like, for all I know, there's somebody behind me, kind of thing. We as the audience know that there isn't. So it's like, so where is it going to come from? And then the answer comes, you know, just from the side, you know, like, even though you're looking, you know, from side to side, should be in your periphery, but it's not somehow.
I mean, I assumed that he was probably, because if it was on like the little porch there, he's probably hiding under one of the tables. But I always felt so bad for Mark. Like, I think out of like, well, him and Vicky, really, like both of them, but like, especially him, because he was just such a nice person, you know, like he
seemed like a gentle giant. Like he wasn't a prick about beating everybody at arm wrestling. He was, but he didn't have a problem beating people at arm wrestling. Like, he just seemed like a really decent guy. And also, okay, I was always, I don't know, there was always something about the way he delivered the line that I liked. When she asks him, like, so like, I don't even remember how she phrased it, but she's just something like, so does everything, you know, work, or, you know, so. Or can you, you know, and he's just kind of like, oh, I do all right, one way or another. And there was always something I loved about that, because it told me, like, honey, you're going to get off. I'm going to make it a priority that you're going to have a good night, you know, if you're with me. And I always, I don't know, again, one more thing that makes me like him as an adult even more. I'm just kind of like, good for you, you know, don't be selfish. Yeah,
and he probably gets like the most mean-spirited kill too, because like not only does he get slashed in the face, but then proceeds to tumble down this like, it's almost like the Exorcist stairs, just like it never ending to the point where they have to like freeze frame and like do like the fade to white thing. But all I could think of is just like, this counselor training center is not handicapped accessible in the least bit. Like, the first time we see him, he's like having difficulty like getting down like the steep hill, and just like, what are they doing? Like, where's the ramp?
Can I also tell you, like, the first time that I watched this movie with my sister and we first see Mark making his entrance, we both burst out laughing because we were just like, oh my God, he's dead. Like, it was so, and we weren't laughing at his expense. It was just like the movie, again, like kind of like with the hot dogs with Muffin. It was like, he may as well just kind of like have like, you know, a tombstone like on the back of his wheelchair or something, because it's like, you're not going to be able to outrun him. You're not going to be, I mean, we don't want to see you go, but dude, you're fucked. You were in the wrong camp. Get out while you can, kind of thing. And but also the fact that he was so nice, and then the fact that he was gonna like get it on with Vicky, and that it always felt, even though as direct as she was being, I don't know, it always just felt so kind of sweet. Like, what do we play for? The way I still laugh at the way she drapes herself on the chair and just goes, position, you know, like, I'm such a culture, like, because the thing is,
from the Bronx,
she's playing it up like, I'm such a sultry seductress, but because it's coming from
all
such
I want
an
is your
innocent
fingers.
girl, I know, but the fact that it's coming from such a sweet girl, I'm just like, look at you trying to be all grown up, like, and
meanwhile she's off, you know, because she's like, we got the whole camp, I just got to go get a few things. And I don't like, there's something I love about that scene, because there's so many like bits when she's like putting the perfume on, and she's just like hesitates, and then like panties, spritz, and she's just like, she has this like this like look on her. She's just like, like, I'm so naughty. And she has that line.
I'll leave it alone.
I'll never forget when she walks into the cabin. She's like, Terry, you turkey.
So cute. Also love that she changes out of black cotton panties to brown. I don't know. They don't look like silk, or they look like they might be silky. Like, they look silky, but they also look like they might be some kind of polyester blend that's, just got like a reflective quality to it. I never thought of brown panties as particularly alluring. So I don't know. I just thought that was a cute.
Maybe it was a callback to the joke or the
to Beethoven's movement.
Your face.
And she's gonna go in and say, "This is where I want you."
Vicky's panties.
What's brown and sits on a piano bench? My panties. Can't take the Bronx out of the girl. God.
Wow. I don't know what that was.
I don't know. Where did it come from?
Yeah.
Apologies to anybody listening in the Bronx. I don't know shit about the Bronx. I've been there like twice. Anyway.
But then we get the impalement, the devil impalement, which I guess. So this is originally a kill that was seen in 1971's Twitch of the Death Nerve, aka Bay of Blood. And so 10 years earlier, and I guess that they did it. They like wrote it into the movie, and they didn't realize that they had it already existed in a movie. So I think like they were, I don't know, criticized, but they're just like, oh, you paid homage to this movie, and they're like, oh, we thought that was original.
Yeah.
Oh well,
it happens. Yeah. It happens in this subgenre, especially. But also they filmed it in its entirety, and that's the scene that they couldn't use because the actress playing Sandra, Marta Kober, was underage, and there was nudity in it. So unfortunately,
I will say, like that couple, like it just like it doesn't, that whole sex scene, like for what it is, it doesn't seem exploitative. Like they actually seem like genuinely, because like after they're done, he's like, oh, I'm so, like, he just seems like he's so in love and just like happy to be there with her. So like that's another thing. Like I feel bad for all of these characters. Like there's not a single one of them that, I mean, if anyone, like probably, and I like Ted, but I mean, like if anything, like he was probably the one that was just like, yeah, I guess, like he seemed like a Jason victim for sure.
Totally.
But everyone else, I mean, like everyone else had potential too. I mean, if Ginny wasn't in this movie, like any of them could have been like a final couple. But I guess like production wise, didn't they leave him there? Didn't they blew some like cocaine?
Oh, this is the thing. It's indiscriminate, like some powder, because he was on his knees because they had to get the spear through the plastic bag that they had fashioned, and I would still love to see that footage somewhere. I know that the image was on the back of the VHS that was originally released for the movie of the kill. That is not in the movie, or the exposed kill, the special effect that they created. Anyway, he was like on his knees for I think about 5 hours or something, and because it takes a long time to set that up and then to set all the lights and get every angle that you need, and they were trying to get it all in one go, like in one setup. That they would continually change the camera and everything like that, but the effect remained the same. And so he's laying there, and at one point, I think it was the sound guy came over to him and just said like, "So how are you holding up? How's it going?" And he's just like, "I'm all right. I'm a little uncomfortable, but I'm good. I'm good." And the guy's just like, "Open your mouth." And Bill Randolph, Jeff, opened his mouth. And he just blew this indiscriminate powder into his face. Yeah. And he said, I don't know what it was. All I know is I was feeling absolutely no pain for the rest of the time when we were on set.
Yeah. Well, they left him there. Like everyone went for lunch, and they just like, they're like, Casey.
He didn't care. He wasn't even conscious of it. He was just kind of like, chasing the.
Maybe that's why he seems so elated. Like in that when he's just like. Like so great to be here with my underage girlfriend.
Right. Also, He always looked, that particular actor, the one who plays Jeff, always looked like a weird kind of like mixture of, he was like equal parts young John Travolta and young Jeff Conaway, Kaneki. Like he looked like Danny Zuko and Kaneki from Grease combined into one for me.
Well, like his little like newsy hat. Like
yeah,
and I think he had a harmonica at one point too.
Yes, he did. He was playing the harmonica when I think she threw her bra on his face, and he just started laughing really spontaneously. Again, it feels real. It feels like this is a real couple, and it doesn't feel like you're making two kids do something that they wouldn't be doing. Because if you were with someone who was wearing a bra, took it off, and just threw it on your face, you'd probably laugh at it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that's followed by Vicky. And the only thing that, I mean, because that's like our first real like close up of like the sack head and like really getting the look of that with like the lightning crashing. Yeah. But all I really remember is like the black thumbnail. That's like my biggest thing. And the weird way that he holds the knife too.
Yeah. Well, because it's right there. It's like must hold it in front of camera. But the black thumbnail is a standout for me every single time because it feels, even though it was probably just like an accident and one of the stunts that they attempted to make Warrington Gillette, the first Jason they cast, do. And he was not a stunt man, and I don't think they said anything. I don't remember if they said things about stunts and he lied when he got the job, or if they just didn't tell him, by the way, you're going to be doing a bunch of stunts, and he was just kind of like, I'm not a stunt man. I don't know how to do any stunts. And they're like, well, you'll figure it out. Yeah. And he did what he could, and that is Warrington Gillette's thumb in the shot because Lauren Marie Taylor went on record saying her Jason was Warrington Gillette. That's who she worked with. So everything every interaction they have in that scene is him. But it was probably just an accident, in production. But they thought, oh fuck, get that thumb, like it looks like you're a hillbilly, And so I'm fond of that. I'm fond of, again, we get another down the barrel of the camera, looking into the audience's eyes. Blood curdling scream from Vicky this time because she can let it out.
This is this is going to be a really long episode because
I know
we're already at a while here, but so let's get to like the climax, like the last big scene really, and just kind of go over that, and then we'll get to the cherry picker. But from everything cool. Like with from Ginny and Paul coming back to basically the end of
it's hilarious
where's Paul?
That it's hilarious that her final girl energy doesn't really kick in right away because Paul is trying to tackle the beast in the dark and everything like that. Oh, there's someone in this fucking room. But
I like that there's a line between because it's when they're walking after they found like the bloody sheets. I think it was, or it might have been that, but they're walking down the stairs, and it's almost like he like cut her off because she's just like, "What's going on?" Like, just like, "What's going on?" Nothing. Like he just like says it a little too fast. That's like that like it's just the difference between like Alice and Ginny. It's just like, what is going on? Just like, what's going on? Like, no, nothing. No, but he says it more like nothing. Like. Some way like that. It was a little more playful. Mm-hmm. But there's someone in this fucking room.
Also, the fact that she says, "Isn't this the one with the exchange?" Maybe I'm misremembering, but isn't this the one where he sees the sheets and he's just kind of like, "Oh, this is like another prank," and she's just like, "I don't think so. They wouldn't do something like this.
They wouldn't leave the lights on." Like she's giving them way too much credit than they deserve. Like, have she not met these people? Like, they are not responsible. Teenager.
No, but I mean, also like discovering like the blood and everything. Like, this is too far. They would not go this far. Like, we had some stupid pranks being done, but this is really gross. Like I kind of like that.
So she's like insinuating that like there's actual faith. Like murder.
It's a maternal faith in her kids. I also the fact that he kind of that he ends up having to wrestle Jason and she's just kind of hanging back like, oh, you got this, babe, and just waiting it out to see who wins, and then when it's quiet and that kind of like surprise like Paul, and then Jason pops up and screams like, oh fuck, I'm out of here, fuck Paul, I guess he's dead, bye. You're not my all.
I gave my all.
I gave my all. And one thing I love
power.
But because as you know, we mentioned before, because Amy Steele is such a kind of consummate actress. I love the fact that so much of this follows is it works because of her performance. Like that door bit where she's holding on to the handle because she doesn't want him to get in, and but there's no lock on it, so she has to hold on to it and slowly ease over to the next door. And she doesn't want to let it go. I know exactly how that scene plays out. I've seen it so many times, and I still am like getting like when I'm watching her, because she's so like tentatively like doing exactly what anybody would do. Like, I don't want to let go of the knob, but I gotta get over here to the other side. But I don't want to. Okay, it's not coming. And then so when we finally get that crash through the window, it works so well.
I always think of Mean Girls when I see that, because it's like the scene that they're watching when Lindsay Lohan comes in her Halloween costume, and the timing of like the jump scare and them seeing her is like the exact same moment, and they scream at it. And I just remember being like, oh, it's Friday the 13th part 2. Like, oh, I love that.
Totally. Like, you better be watching that. But I also had a thought. I always have this thought when I see her running around. It's similar to the thought that I had for Marilyn Burns before Amy Steele, when she was running around, when Marilyn was running around in her white pants and TCM, and seeing Ginny running around in FT13, so part 2, P2, watching Ginny in her blue top that's just so incandescent in the moonlight and everything like that. The fact that she's so incredibly visible. She always, it's always like, how are you gonna hide in that? Makes me sad. Wanted to ask you, because this is another kind of good litmus test maybe for an audience and the way they see this movie. How do you interpret the under the bed sequence with the rat?
I always thought, like, for the longest time, I was just like, so the rat peed, and it was like, because she was like freaking out because, and then it came over and it like urinated, and she was just afraid that like, he was gonna see the pee. And that was the thing. But then there's like, I saw like forums and stuff. There's no way that a rat's pee would be that big or something like that. But it's like, I don't think that we see like a wet spot on her pants that like would indicate that like she peed.
Well, she's got pretty dark jeans on, but the way I always perceived it, because there are a lot of people who believe that the rat was peeing. I never thought that. And I've heard other people say, I'll say it right after I say what I believe, but what I always perceived and still perceive is the fact that she's underneath the bed. She's hiding. She's already scared shitless good choice of words. So now this rat is coming that is like this, making like this liability, toward her survival. And she can't let out a scream, but she is just so fucking scared. And she doesn't have the presence of mind to even like push it away, because you can tell when a rodent is pushed as opposed to when they're just wandering. So she's just so scared that she pisses her pants, and that's what we see. And because I always had the same response when I would watch it, even the first time, I remember my sister and I both went, oh, like, poor thing, oh my god, she's so scared, that must be so scary. I remember having a talk with my oldest friend John Carlos, who's just kind of like, okay, you've got a guy with a pitchfork who's chasing you, and you're gonna piss yourself over a rat? Come on! And I'm like, okay, one thing does not exclude the other. It's compounding the fear, is how I always saw it. I always felt like, okay, so not only is this guy after me, but now this thing that could possibly, if it bites me, who knows if I'm going to get the El Norte disease or whatever, like I could catch a plague. Like, some people are just terrified of rodents, like maybe she had a phobia. I don't know.
All I'll say is that, like, despite the fact that, like, if she did piss her pants, like, it doesn't change my opinion of her. I'm just kind of like, I'm just like, fuck, like, you were so badass that you pissed your pants and then kept surviving, like,
yeah, totally.
But and I mentioned just like this Jason being like a lot smarter, because like we see that thing, like, he almost like fakes leaving the cabin, but then he's like up on a chair, only like, he's kind of hoisted by his own petard because the chair breaks under his weight. But it's just like little, like, them still just trying to like discover like who is Jason, like what are his strengths and weaknesses and all that, because I mean, like, every Jason in every film is different.
Yeah.
But I always like really liked this one the most. I don't know there was just something about the hillbilly sack over the head that I felt was like the scariest.
Me too.
And I don't know, like this is the movie, like this introduced me to The Town That Dreaded Sundown, because I saw this after, like well after the fact, because I remember being in the video store and just seeing the cover for that movie and just being like, oh, Jason, it's like there's another like Jason thing, and I rented it and I was just like, okay, it's not, but I mean it's still like it's creepy as fuck, and I guess that was they borrowed from that movie just to make the design for Jason in this one.
There's another movie called Baghead, which is all about just like there's nothing scarier in the world than a man out in the middle of the woods with a bag over his head. Like
you just have this like magical, like you just like keep for anyone listening, he just like took a DVD out and showed us. I just see like a satchel and you just like it's like you pre-planned this before we started the pod. Like, here's all the things that I might reference. I'm gonna have them on hand just to like pull them out.
I am also studying macrame. No, and I just pull a pot holder from the 70s, like.
But then we get the scene which I just find so annoying because it's sort of set up earlier with a chainsaw, and she pulls it out and I don't know what the fuck happens because like it dies, like before she can even. Yeah, I know, like,
it's a shame.
Yeah, it would have been nice.
It's a badass moment. Yeah. It's like a big, woo, yeah, go girl, and then it's over.
The only thing, and I hate that I keep referencing Halloween Resurrection in this episode, but it's the same fucking thing in the end of that movie, you know, with little Sarah when she's just like, "This is for Rudy and for all of them," and it's just like I think it like hits a wire or like something, and it just like zaps all the power out of it. But she's just kind of like, uh-oh. But Ginny's not like, Ginny's just kind of like, well, I guess I'm getting the fuck out of here.
In fact, I think that moment happens again in 5 with the woman who runs
Pam,
the little Pam with the she pulls out a chainsaw. I don't remember if it runs out, but at some point she can't use it anymore. I think she has to keep pulling the thing and it just won't start again, and then they have to figure out a plan B. But anyway, chainsaws in this franchise present, not predominant, but present.
I'm surprised also, that we never saw like the pitchfork again, because I do really like the usage of that as a murder implement, because it goes with the hillbilly Jason look.
Yeah, but he doesn't. I mean, that only lasted in this film. If they would have brought back the hillbilly Jason look, they probably would have brought back the pitchfork. He's still got the hillbilly energy in the next movie for sure, but we never see the Baghead.
I guess again. we do have Pearl. You know, we can always go to that if we need some more pitchfork murders, because in both X and Pearl,
those are good. Also, I do appreciate the another thing, just like Amy Steele praising her performance when she's in the car. I love when the pitchfork goes through her roof, her convertible roof, and she's just like, "Oh my god!" Like, there's something so authentic about it, because it's fear, but it's not acted fear. It's like literally almost kind of disbelief. Like, "Oh shit, my roof!" You know, like, I can't. What's about to happen? How is this happening? Kind of energy.
It's like that's going to cost a lot of money to repair. You know?
Yeah, and also this person is crazy. Like, what is he doing? You know, like it just bespeaks so much, like in its subtext. And then the loping. I remember, okay, so this is the Jason played by Steve Dash in most of this sequence that we've been describing. Warrington Gillette comes back only, I believe, for the final Jason scare, through the burst through the window, the iconic moment. And it is iconic, so I call it iconic. I'm not overusing that word, but anyway, because it set a precedent. Like, that happened over and over again in this franchise, with Jason bursting through something and his arms just gripping someone and trying to pull them back through the hole with him. But anyway, Steve Dash, I always had this argument with people too. So many people who think they know this franchise saying, like, criticizing things for, I think usually criticizing the reboot for Jason running And they'd be like, Jason doesn't run. Jason just walks. And I'm like, you're thinking about Michael Myers. Jason runs. And they're like, no, he doesn't. And I'm like, in the first 3 movies that Jason appears in, as an adult, he runs. Yeah. Like, he does? And I'm like, yeah. Steve Dash played it in the second movie, and he called it a lope. You know, like he said, he loped around. Like the kind of like a limp run, like a ba-boom, 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 kind of, you know.
I don't think it wasn't until why am I drawing a blank? Who played Jason in 7, 8, 9, and 10?
Kane Hodder?
Yeah. Fuck. Oh, how did I forget that? It was
fired.
I know, right?
Go on.
Shame.
You're
shame.
You're rehired. You're
for
rehired.
Shame.
Finish your thought.
Thank you. But no, it wasn't until Kane Hodder that I feel like it kind of became that slow moving, you know, big lummox. Because in 6, I do seem to recall there was a lot of like, it wasn't running in that movie, but it was like fast pace. It was like almost like you know, when you see moms going down the street at their like brisk pace of just like, gotta keep our heart rate up. And there's the one shot I remember specifically with the tight pants on, and you know, you can see the actors very present rear end in those tight pants. They're just being like, whoa, we got a sexy Jason here.
But who got hired after the initial Jason?
After that, the
one day
one,
of work.
Yeah. But yeah, it was. I think it was Kane Hodder that was the slow moving one, and I think just the fact that he was the most consistent Jason, and just in terms of like movie appearances, that sort of became the well-known.
Yeah, he's still the only actor to play it multiple times. Everybody else got like one shot, and that was it.
Yeah, because Freddy versus Jason, he didn't run in that at all. He was even slower from what I remember. I think that there must have been some running in. There was definitely running in the remake, because I remember when he like came running that opening scene. Yeah. So.
Well, because they were criticizing it. They were saying he runs in the remake and Jason doesn't run. I'm like, he runs in the first 3 movies that he appears in as an adult. And they're like, what? And I'm just like, and then in part 3, we'll cover those when we talk about those pods. But but in this one he ran, or loped, as Steve Dash said. But I love Steve Dash because he was always concerned with safety. Other people's safety before his own, even. Like, he got an injury in what seems to be such a kind of like, not insignificant, but just like a kind of like, you know, it goes by and you don't really give much thought to it. It's the shot where when Ginny moves into her own and puts on the sweater and tucks the hair into the, you know, the sweater, and
thinking on her feet, you know, just using that child's psychology she's majoring in.
As terrified as she is, and I remember even watching it again the first time, and I still feel it when I watch it. I'm just like, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could take this bloody old, like, you know, who knows how many insects or nits or fleas are in that sweater now. And she's like putting it on and like, you know, trying to like keep her hair like tucked away and everything, trying to like look like the beheaded, you know, mother.
Well, when they after the fact, when they're leaving the shack, that's like the first thing she's just like, ugh. Like,
yeah, right.
Get
Just
rid of
get
that,
it off
that
of me.
nasty thing.
But she also has that innate curiosity of like, I'm pulling the sack off his head. I want to see what he's hiding, and then she sees it and does that great drop jaw. Yeah. Ooh,
so that okay. So because this is like the Betsy Palmer cameo, as it were, and apparently, from what I understand, all the scenes with Betsy Palmer were directed by Wes Craven.
That's the rumor. I haven't heard it confirmed by any direct sources. How did you find out?
I have no idea. I've read it in places before, and nobody's contested it. But it was just that because he was affiliated with I think it was either Steve Miner or Sean Cunningham at the time.
It was Sean Cunningham. They were buddies.
Yeah, and they just like came in like because obviously that was done on like a sound studio or something, like a separate thing, like with like a black background. So I think you know, maybe Steve Miner just wasn't available, and Wes Craven went down there and was just like, cool, all right, here's the lines, you know, just all he had to do was like basically just turn on the camera and just be like, here we go. Action.
And what's interesting, I haven't heard Betsy Palmer in her interviews. R.I.P. Betsy Palmer. I haven't heard in any of the interviews she gave. She's addressed it for sure. She doesn't avoid it. But I haven't heard. She's spoken at length about the scripts. She was approached 3 times in the rest of the franchise to come back, and she refused each time, most famously in Freddy versus Jason. Yeah. But with this one, it was just simply put as in one interview that I saw. I think it was Crystal Lake Memories, where they said, "Would you come back and do this kind of dream sequence or whatever, this fantasy sequence?" And she said, "All right, I'll do that." And that's as much insight as she gave to her decision, which I guess meant maybe they were paying her something that was comparable to what she made for the first movie. Yeah. I hope, she deserves every penny, because it does add something. I mean, as much as I love seeing Ginny play it, I love that we get both, that we get to see that weird, kind of like watery dissolve to Betsy Palmer and Jason.
And we haven't even really, we haven't even really talked about Harry Manfredini, because I love that this score for the most part is like very similar to the first one, but it does have that there's this weird tingly, mysterious thing whenever. Just speaking of the water effect, that it does really, it sounds like water. You know what I would think like water if it had a sound in a
genuine aquatic
score.
Feel to this score. Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's the way the movie opens with all of the flashbacks and everything like that. So for it to come back, we've introduced Betsy Palmer in this flashback, and now we're introducing her in this fantasy thing. It does happen throughout the movie, but for it to kind of chime back in with her is so nice. I love Harry Manfredini and the decisions he makes. You can tell he really these jobs weren't beneath him. He was having fun and always looking for something new to kind of bring to the table, which I really, really admire. Also, just the fact that I was talking about the shot where Steve Dash got hurt. It's when unfortunately Ginny moves a little to the right and exposes the severed head, and he sees it. It's like, "Mommy, what?" And that eye acting, also, that is oh my gosh, applause to Steve Dash for because the sadness and the wonder in the eye while he's trying to figure out, is that my mom and everything. Amy Steele subsequently watched the movie before one of her interviews and said she was so incredibly moved by it. She was like, "Oh my God, he thinks it's his mother." And I think Adrian King, the same thing. He really got to the heart of these final girls. But then when he discovers that it's not really his mother, "That's a severed head. You're just that girl who I'm trying to kill," I guess. And he takes a swipe at her, and she's got the machete and he's got the pickaxe, I think, at that point. And they're supposed to just clang together in a shot. And the first take they did that, they missed, and she actually cut his finger. Yeah, sliced into his hand, and they had to stop. They had to take him to the emergency room, and Steve Dash, I can't remember if it was his idea or whoever was with him, but they got it in their head that they were going to have some fun with the emergency room staff, because he still had, because I guess just for that shot they had already put the machete in his shoulder, because we don't see that in the shot. Yeah. So he goes in with this fake machete into his shoulder, and I think the crew member goes in first and just goes, "Oh my gosh, it's bad. It's bad. Oh, it's terrible. He's outside. He's making his way in, but just so you know, it's bad. It's bad."
They did that?
So in comes Steve. Yeah, and so in comes Steve
That
Dash
is
with
so
this,
shitty. That is okay. I mean, it's in theory it seems funny, but you're going into a hospital. These are medical professionals who take their job seriously, and you don't know there's other patients in this place. Someone who might actually require emergency medical assistance, and that they would play that prank.
Well, because this is the thing. He walked in, he loped in with the machete in his shoulder, and the staff was all like, "Ah," because they're like, "Oh my goodness," and he's, but nobody's getting hysterical or anything, but they're shocked. And he went over and loped to the reception desk and just said, "Do you have anything for a headache?" And apparently they laughed. They did think it was funny because they was just, they were just kind of like, "What?" And obviously he wasn't in any pain, so it's like, "Oh, you," probably a lot like Terry with Scott, just a lot of side eye, and then they sewed up his hand and just sent him on his way. But But yeah, they and I know that they made poor Amy Steele shoot that scene from behind where she gets captured by Warrington Gillette.
Okay, so
multiple times.
Yeah, she did not like that. But okay, here's the question:
Not
like,
at
do
all.
you think is that scene canon? Like, is that actually happening in reality, or is that her nightmare? And I say this because we know that Muffin is dead. We see the mangled up dog, but here's Muffin alive and well at the end. And in the next movie at the beginning, the opening, it just shows that scene where like he gets up and takes the machete out of his thing. It doesn't have the sack over his head anymore and just like hobbles off somewhere. So we can just assume that then he went off to like the Harold's and Edna convenience store after that.
And just didn't bleed out. Just didn't. Found a new shirt off the laundry line, maybe. Oh, we'll get there. But no, I like to believe that it actually happened, because this is the thing.
Yeah.
I like to imagine that now, of course, that he survived, that little exchange with Ginny, and will survive more in the future. Burst through the window doing his token thing that he's going to do throughout the franchise in scenes that are not dream sequences. I think because there was a question mark over Sandra and Jeff's head about whether it was Muffin. Like, it looked like Muffin, but what if it isn't? What if it's another dog?
It had the same ribbons, though.
Yeah, so what if like they just took their dog to the same groomer that Terry took Muffin to, and maybe there was a family camping nearby and they're long gone. And maybe he got hungry like Michael Myers, like, who knows? Because also they were like, it looks like a dog, but they couldn't even decipher whether it actually was.
But then it sort of like segues into the next scene where when the EMS is there and they're taking her away, and there's the whole like, where's Paul? So I think like
exactly.
I like to think that she just kind of like passed out from exhaustion, and then the paramedics came and got her, and then there was just sort of like this scene. There's this big debate of whether like Paul is alive or dead, or whatever the
what do you think?
Case. Well, they confirm. I mean, if we are jumping into like the beginning of part 3, they specify like a body count of just like all the bodies that they found spread over the place, and I think it accounts for the kills that we saw, which also includes like the body of Alice, which is also like the skeletal corpse that still has the ice pick in the head. He just let it like decompose like in the
over
the
5
altar.
years.
Yeah,
but they found her. Found her.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, they never found the body, but she disappeared. That's right. I forgot about that.
No. Yeah, like her. Yeah, she was taken to the altar. Like she's the skeleton that's seen there.
Yes.
And there's the deputy, and Terry is in there as well, and then wherever the other bodies were. So Paul was not among the dead counted. So I mean personally, I think like this is what I've read online of just like actual like continuity and timelines and stuff, is that they left the shack, or Jason's little hut, and they went back to the camp, and the next day they were taken out, and like all that was just a night. Ginny had a nightmare of like Muffin coming back there and then getting grabbed out the window, because then how do you account for her getting grabbed out the window, and then how is Paul missing but she's still alive? It's just
what I think happened is that she got pulled through that window. Jason was loping away with her.
Eloping.
Paul, it's
they
Steve
elope?
Dash's word. No, but I don't know. I like it. Then so Paul takes off naturally. In that direction after her. Probably incapacitates Jason for like a moment and like beats on him for a while. Gets Ginny away from him, and they're still kind of like around like the window and where she could be recovered and found and everything like that by the ambulance and the paramedics and whatnot. But I think what ends up happening is Paul, in my headcanon, Paul misjudged that he had the upper hand with Jason, and Jason ended up like maybe grabbing his arm or tripping him or doing something and killing him, but maybe not killing him right away. Like maybe it got personal this time because he was so fed up after everything that he went that he took Paul to another place, someplace hidden where he could start his new pile of bodies. Hey, you asked me.
You know what they should have done?
They just didn't find Paul. That's what it is. Paul is dead, but they didn't find him. That's what This
is what should have happened. Like when they come back to the cabin, he sits her down on the bed, and then you hear like the screen door open, and there's like the rustling at the door or whatever, and they're like, and they go up there, and they're just like, okay, we're gonna open it slowly, and then they open it, and then like they're standing Ted, who's like stumbled back to the camp, drunk. And he's just like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, Jason comes out and like then grabs Ted. And Ted is the one that unfortunately gets pulled off to the side. Because it's almost like, great. Yeah, it's almost like, remember that guy who we for sure like thought would die, but then he just kind of disappeared. Well, now he's back. And now we're going to kill him. And then that could have been like the segue into the next scene. We're just like, but instead of Paul, it could have been like, where's Ted?
But you didn't answer my question though. You like within the framework of this movie, where is Paul for you? Where is he then?
I think he's just like probably was in another ambulance, or he was still in the cabin being looked at. She was delirious.
Then why isn't anybody telling her then?
Because they're assholes. All right, okay, oh my gosh, we're like 2 hours and 40.
I know.
Okay, we'll address whatever else in the cherry picker. So let's lope to the cherry picker.
It's not like we kill people on purpose.
First order of business, we need a cherry on top. I think that we're both in agreement on this.
I mean, yeah.
It's Ginny Field.
It's Vicky. No, it's Ginny. It's totally
Vicky.
Ginny.
It's Terry.
Vicky.
It's Terry the turkey. But
the one with the puck.
Yeah. But now, okay, for our last week, we asked you who deserves to die the most in American Psycho. I nominated Paul Allen. You nominated Donald Kimball, the detective. Yeah. Across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, we have 696 for Paul Allen versus 119 for Detective Kimball. This may as well have been Jared Leto versus Willem Dafoe. Like, who deserves to...
Totally.
It's like not even their characters. It's just like, who deserves to die the most out of.
Well, what did they say? I want to hear what they said.
I am very eager to tell you that. Let me pull up the that information for you. As I don't have it in front of me. Okay. Michael Begley says, Paul every day of the week. The fact he's played by Jared Leto just makes it that much better.
Keep going.
Vampira's Coffin says, Batman killing Joker or the Green Goblin? Hard choice.
Oh, God.
I think, were you the one that you made the DC comparison? Yeah, or maybe that was
totally.
I can't remember. Yeah.
DC and Marvel, yeah.
Man behind the mask says Paul Allen because he's annoying and a show-off. Obsessed with the pod, by the way, guys. It gets me through a long and stressful day at work. Thanks, Mr. Cherry and Edward. And then we've got like one of these.
Appreciate this. Oh, cool. I hope you appreciate this extra long episode then.
Yeah. How did it go so long? Oh my gosh.
We're passionate about this one, I guess. I don't know.
I think it was also because I was insisted that we go through it scene by scene and not knowing that like that was gonna. Let's not do that again. Rob Rangel says voted Paul because I remember him being one of those annoying coworkers.
Okay.
Rashim says Paul gets my vote because his business card was not all that great.
I agree.
Yeah, it was.
I liked some of the other ones more.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that. We'll need to do that, a ranking of like the business cards in American Psycho.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
Yeah. and apparently on every single one of them, they misspelled acquisitions.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And I don't think it was intentional. Like, it was like a production. Like,
it was just a typo. Great.
Denise says, I like to watch it from another perspective of the Green Goblin and the Joker from Jared would fight each other, then I believe the Goblin would win for sure. And also, come on, it's Jared versus Willem. I can't get over my heart to kill Willem off. I guess people are okay with Jared getting killed.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that way sometimes myself. Go on.
Yeah, I'm not. I can't say I'm a fan.
No, I
was like surprised because you and we talk about comedian Mateo Lane all the time, yeah. And I saw one of his like Instagram posts the other day, and he was just like talking about Jared Leto and just like how much he loves him, and I'm just like, I don't know how, why? But anyway, and he said something very like inappropriate. I mean, like not inappropriate for me, but maybe inappropriate for like the podcast. but yeah. Anyway, TP Hoarder says, has anyone seen Paul Allen's card? He needed to die for that. Wow, a lot of people don't like Paul or his card. Thomas Baker says Paul was so cocky. Plus, it's Jared Leto, so that's it.
There we go.
Becky says, well, that proves I've never watched it. Well, you need to get on that, Becky.
Yeah, watch it, Becky.
Here's one for you. Braven Burris says, Kimball, because the little gay boy in me refuses to see Paul as the problem. He was just a product of his environment, and I can change him. LOL, this movie was my sexual awakening and a warning
God, so cool.
sign in my bad taste in men.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Silent Saturn says Detective Kimball, because I didn't mind Jared Leto and I haven't voted for Eddie's pick in a while. So basically, that was just like a pity.
Throwing me a bone. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And then Blue Box 87 says Paul Allen because he's Jared Leto.
Oh,
wow. I mean,
there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of things to dislike about Jared
we don't need
Leto
to get into
days.
Jared Leto.
I was a fan when the movie got released. Like, I mean, that's all I can say, really. Because this followed... Wasn't this because this was 2000? I think Requiem for a Dream was 2001, and that was what really.
We'll talk about him whenever we get around to Urban Legend, because it's
okay,
gonna happen at some point.
We'll have more time for that one. Yeah.
But okay, so I get first dibs. I'm gonna nominate Deputy Winslow. I don't know if he has a first name. I'll find out. But I'm gonna nominate him because I don't like his attitude.
Yeah.
I don't fucking like him thinking that he's like the one that is like been enlisted with like patrolling this ground to make sure that there's no criminal activity. Like people are stepping over like a tiny little fence that's not even a fence. Like there's like a town and like shit that's going on. Like do your job somewhere else. Nobody cares about the lake. Like, who is this guy? And his whole thing, it's like, it's been quiet here for 5 years, Holt. Like, that's how we want to keep it. Yeah, he just sucks. I don't like him. He's my mom.
I remember watching Crystal Lake Memories with the commentary once, because it has the commentary by the documentarians.
Yeah.
And they were talking about Jack Marks, who plays Winslow. Yeah. And they said, I don't remember so specifically. It was a while ago, a few years back, but I remember them making a comment about how he's a character, the actor himself, and how it was really hard to get rid of him in his interview because he kept coming up with stories. And it's like, that's great. We're not going to use any of this because, he's, first of all, it's one movie in like how many in a documentary, and you're like one character that like, we're glad you're here. We want to hear what you have to say, but he just kept coming up with more and more stories. Yeah. And he's one of those. Someone you don't want to get stuck on the bus with. Okay. I'm going to choose, I guess it's pretty clear.
I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
You know where I'm going with it. I'm going to choose Ted just because he should have died. He really should have. I mean, the fact that he doesn't help his case. And also just like, as even the only kind of like boon to his presence in the movie is your impression of his first line for me, because I love hearing you say that. But the thing is, as a character, I don't like his prankiness, because he really stressed Jeff out towing his truck like that. And then I don't like his sense of humor. I really don't like the fact that even like just the way after he pulls the prank dressing up like Jason and everything like that at the campfire, he's inside and he's holding the mask and he's making a face at it, like, and I'm just like, stop it, you're gross. Like, your sense of humor is gross. Like, you know, you're not funny. You're kind of it reminds me actually of Nettie. But the thing is, with
I think
Nettie,
Nettie's worse.
But the thing is with Nettie is we get to watch him be somber, and that actually, like I said, when we were discussing that cherry picker, like my heart kind of goes out to him for that. I don't get any of that with Ted. Ted is just kind of a jackass. So there's nothing redeemable about it.
Your impression of his laugh gave me what's his face from Halloween 5, the Sammy's boyfriend, whatever his name is. Yeah.
That guy.
Who I can't even remember the character's name, that one. Yeah.
Neither can I. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I choose Ted for all of those reasons and more. There you go.
All right.
Vote your conscience, vote your heart.
Yeah, there you go. You can vote on Instagram. Our Instagram account is the Cherry Picker Pod. You can vote on YouTube. That is just the Cherry Picker. It's in the community tab.
YouTube.
If you are new to the Cherry Picker, you can watch these episodes and see our faces by going to YouTube. Please subscribe. And if you are watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to these. The RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. You can also vote on Patreon if you are supporting us there. If you're subscribed to the $1 tier, the Pinhead one, that gets you early access to all of these episodes. Like we said before, the Freddy Krueger one, which is $5, that is the Cherry Picker After Dark, the exclusive episode that we do once a month. This month we are doing... Do you know what it is?
Wild Things.
Yeah.
Okay. I always want to test the waters.
Wild Things. With Nev Campbell.
And Denise Richards.
And Denise Richards. And Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
And Matt Dillon. Yeah. Very, very 90s. And anything that links back to Scream is also good in our books. So yeah, that is...
Or Valentine.
Right. That is my Patreon account, Zach Cherry. Eduardo Soch, where can they find you?
You can find me on my Soch. I'm on the Insta at Edward is Truth, all one word, and on the Ute. If you type in Edward is Truth, all one word, you should find me. Okay. Feel free to subscribe. Watch me watch stuff. How about you, Zach Cherry?
You can find me on YouTube, Zach Cherry, ZackCherry. That's my main channel. I'm also on Instagram at RetroBitchface and Twitter at ZachCherry8. I totally forgot to... Yeah. You're in there. I totally forgot. Okay, no, we have new Patreon supporters. I'm talking about Patreon, and I forgot to say hi. So let's roll out the red carpet because I'd like to welcome and thank Amanda V, Whale Wolf.
Yay! Sorry.
We'll do it at the end. Welcome to Amanda V, Whale Wolf, Suki Akari 1203, James Harrington, Opal Wallen, Jesse Krempel, Heather Utterback, and Rachel Clare.
Yay! Welcome!
There we go. And also a huge thank you to Andre Felix, who is our podcast editor. Thank you very much, Andre. And
editor extraordinaire.
And also, what's going on next week?
It's the one with the 5
creams.
Types of cream.
Yeah. I'll take my
It's
coffee
Scream.
with 5 creams. Yeah.
I'll take my coffee with 5 types of cream.
Yeah.
My name's Vicky. I'm from the Bronx.
Yeah.
But it's Scream 2022.
Yeah. Scream 5.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
So tune in next
It's
week
just
for
called
that.
Scream, though, isn't it? It's just Scream. It's not
We'll
Scream 5.
we'll
We
work that
affectionately
out.
call it 5 Cream.
We
Still
will
5
work
Cream.
that out next week, but thank you
All right.
so much for watching, for listening, and we will be right